Greetings, everyone. Today we are going to have an amazing show. I have the beautiful Judyth Baker with us, and I also have one of my best friends that I met on X Destiny Resendez, and we are here to bring you true American history. I want to say hello to Judyth. How are you?
Hi, everybody.
Des, say what's up.
What's up, everybody?
All right. So, for anyone who does not know, Judyth Baker was basically the love of Lee Harvey Oswald's life, and she is here to tell us about their story, their journey, all of her accomplishments with her cancer research, and basically just the climate of what's going on with America right now. So I'm going to open the floor to you, Judyth, and you can kind of give us a brief understanding of your role with Harvey. I'm sorry,
Brief? You want brief?
never brief, as long as you need.
The loquacious one speaketh. There's so much to say. And thank you for giving me the opportunity for those who maybe have not learned. I've been doing this 24 years to just show you how if you're speaking the truth about something controversial, they'll do anything to try to stop it. And like some of you, and we personally mentioned this, we sometimes encounter danger because of it. But we have a responsibility to get the truth out because of the repercussions, because when the truth is known, it gives a whole different perspective about everything. And when I first spoke out, I even was approached by people who wanted to make a movie. They said, look, we believe you. You've got evidence, you have witnesses, unlike some of these other people, that step forth and say, I shot JFK or whatever, and there's not a witness that can verify. Well, I have them. So they say things like, this happened to me not once, but twice, all right? But the worst one went like this. We're going to tell your love story and how wonderful it was and everything like that. In the end, we're going to show that he actually betrayed you and the whole country and went on to kill Kennedy, and he was just a terrible liar. But you'll be a millionaire. You'll be a millionaire. You think my love can be bought? And by the way, when I said, no way, they screamed and yelled on the phone. I'm not kidding. We had met several times and all that. And they said also they would buy my life story, and it would be theirs and all this. Oh, but you'd be rich. Screamed so many horrible, foul language at me you wouldn't believe. And these were important people. The second time they promised, oh, we're going to tell the story just exactly how it is, but we're going to show the other side too. And they made clear that the other side was the true side of everything. But you'll be rich because he just fooled you. He lied to you. So instead, I filed bankruptcy and all kinds of things happened. It was really interesting. The worst being that some of my family members have never spoken to me again. Like, how dare you go and endanger our family? And they had some serious reasons to say that, like in the History Channel that showed 46 minutes. And by the way, critics would say, why are you adding and embellishing and embroidering your story? You've told your story in those 46 minutes. Those 46 minutes were distilled from 38 hours of audio and 18 hours of video to 46 minutes. And I have a right to say what was taken out if it wasn't addressed at all. So, and then sometimes I haven't been able to bring up something because I had no witness. You don't bring up something, everything I tell you, I have background proof for, I have files, I have witness statements. I'm not telling you anything I can't back up. And that's why nobody sued me. And I'm talking about Ochsner Foundation, everybody, including my own former husband. Okay. Oh, we're going to sue you if you bring any of this stuff out. Well, when I brought it out, they didn't because I had it all, I had everything backed up. And that's why rather than deal with that, they will do character assassination. Well, she looks ugly, or she's old, she's demented, whatever, it doesn't matter.
Very,
God has, God has done a wonderful job on me,
yeah, I'm very familiar with that. Judith, maybe you could start us with when you actually met Lee and what that looked like and how long were you guys together before the Kennedy assassination?
And quickly also how you got down to New Orleans. Give people that
All right.
who
Well,
the amazing scientist is here.
that's right. And it's going to take a few minutes because mainly what happened, my grandmother died of cancer. And I had already, um, was, I'd already, soon after I got attention for scoring 160 on an IQ test. This is right after Sputnik, and the CIA was really interested in anybody with over 150. Okay, they were just rounding them up and interviewing them and seeing what their talents were. And I had Dr. Knut Mickelson visit me. Excuse me, I'm allergic to dust, and the air conditioner just turned on and threw a bunch of it at me. Something I've got to change a filter, I guess. Anyway, uh, so the bottom line being that at an early age, I mean, only 15, I ended up getting my own lab at junior high. And then, yeah, and it was a wonderful experience to eventually I'd be connected with Oak Ridge and with Walter Reed. And I have all those documents and everything for that. The doctors that were trained at Oak Ridge who worked with me personally, Dr. Shively and so on. Now, the reason I'm mentioning that is because at Oak Ridge, the training they got was under the eyes of the CIA. My family, by the way, had clearance already anyway, because my father was into rocket science and was an inventor and was considered, an asset for the government in various areas. When we were going to go to Los Alamos and get really involved with the Redstone rocket project, my mother had a fit because, basically we had been living behind barbed wire. And then they said, well, it's the Cold War. A bomb could land on us, wipe out all these scientists. My mother said, forget this. And so my dad was brokenhearted, began drinking a lot. We moved to Florida. He retired. He had so many various inventions he'd made that he lived off his royalties and wanted me to run things. By the time I was 8, I was filling out their income tax returns. I used to build TV sets starting when I was 8 that my dad blew up constantly because he was interested in getting the sets, set up so he could go and modify them and so on. So he helped, for example, to develop the first color TV transmission in the United States from WGN in Chicago. Worked with Robert Adler. Adler actually took credit for a lot of my dad's inventions, but he gave my dad the royalties, but he wanted the glory. That was okay with my dad, because he just wanted to invent and he had the chance to do it. And practically living in his lab, his own lab myself, I was no stranger to science even from childhood. So it was easy for me when I wanted to try and cure cancer to plunge right into it, and it had resources. That way it was wonderful. Excuse me. Um, but the bottom line is this. I wanted to cure cancer. And thinking out of the box and realizing after getting many shocks, like how to put TVs together without getting yourself killed, um, realizing what I had the precautions I had to take with certain things. I invented a new way to get magnesium out of seawater, and it went to the International Science Fair, and there I met more scientists. And then I brought all my cancer research that I was doing independently with me, and wow, it just blew them away. So then I got more help, okay? And so it wasn't even a year later, I had given induced cancer, lung cancer, into germ-free mice thanks to Dr. James Reniers. Reniers had been born in Austria. I came from a Hungarian family. That Hungarian family was listening, along with me, right after my grandma died, to the on October 23rd, 1956. They're all begging, please help us, America. And you could hear machine guns going off and bombs going off. And they had knocked down the statue of Stalin. His head was as big as a bus, and that kind of thing. And had overturned and blown up a tank, but now they were getting massacred. You can imagine how I felt. Well, anyway, Dr. Rainier and my family, of course, we're in America at the same time that on October 23rd, 1956. I'm making this point in my latest interviews because unbelievably, the people don't know this, and you need to know. A young man was also listening. He was only 17, still a boy, really. He was only 1 week into his 17th year, dropped out of high school. You know why? Because on the October 23rd, he was also listening to the same shortwave radios where they say, help us, America, help us, save us. You said you would. And we said we would, but we didn't. We didn't, as usual, I might add. Incite to riot, incite to revolution, and then back out and leave them to suffer and die, or, put in your new regime that you want. At any rate, in this case, it betraying the Hungarians. This young boy, a 17-year-old, he's listening to the same radio broadcast, the shortwave that I'm listening to. Shortwave was our internet back then. That's how we listened to it all around the world, different news. So the next day, he joined the Marines to fight the Reds. That was Lee Harvey Oswald. And people don't know that. You won't find it in Wikipedia. When we tried to put it in, it was gone in 6 minutes. They took it out.
I never heard that. Yeah, I never heard it.
Well, it's true. I have the documents to show that's when he enlisted, right there in Fort Worth.
If you want to show anything, Judyth, shoot it over and we can share
Well,
it.
I'd love to. Unfortunately, I just moved to this new place. I've moved 5 times in 4 years. Okay.
I don't blame you for safety. I'm sure you've got to,
Yeah. Well, no, I'm finished running right now. Come and get me. I don't care anymore.
I feel you.
I say the same thing.
Yes.
Well, that's just the way it is now.
Yeah.
So I didn't just move to a new place. I moved to Dallas, right into the lion's mouth. That's where I am. And I'm going to stay here until either, this is where I am. This is where I'm going to put my fortress. And this is where I'm going to tell everybody what really happened. Just like that. I know so many things about Lee that nobody knows. It's all there in the records. They lie. There are a lot of lies out there that you guys are believing. And I'm one who ferrets out the truth. And so I've been helping people online. I get blocked all the time, even on X. But all I did is mention ivermectin. And Facebook, bam, even though I'd been on there for, 11, 12 years, ever since it started, bingo, that was it. I've been blocked there now for almost 3 years.
That happened to me too.
Ivermectin. Yeah.
That happened to all 3 of us. That happens to all 3 of us. For me, it was ivermectin and Suramin. And I got banned off of 5 radio stations after that.
I posted the gain of function research and got banned.
Well, all right. You're talking to someone who's involved with the first gain of function research.
I know, and I'm so excited to hear much of it.
Yep.
I have so many questions.
we
get to that. I'll wait.
You have to understand that the background of that is that I trusted my doctors. They were my heroes. They were they're best in the United States. I worked with the best. We're talking about Dr. Harold Deal, Vice President of the American Cancer Society, in charge of all the research for the American Cancer Society. Close friend of mine. And who was number 2? Dr. George Moore, head of Roswell Park Institute, where I was given specialized training by him in his own personal lab. And by the way, when I said that, I had people say, oh, come on, even though it's in the newspaper, he still don't believe you. And just 6 months ago or so, when I was in California, maybe 8 months now, as I'm speaking to a group at Menlo Park, up comes this fellow, and he's a research scientist. He said, I was in Dr. Moore's lab personally myself a couple of years after you were. He would take every once in a while that he thought was spectacular, in the field, and they're young and all that, and personally train them. I was one of them. And here this man, so even though I had newspaper articles about it, at least, now I even have a witness that actually that Moore would do this, Dr. George Moore, who had like 800 technicians and scientists working for him, and yet in his own lab. And there are only three other people, and there are only 4 of us and him.
Where was the lab?
This is Roswell Park Institute in Buffalo, New York. And then I was trained also by Dr. James T. Grace. He became the director after Dr. Moore, by the way. And from him, I got personal training in handling the SB40 monkey virus and all the very special viruses that you name them. I learned how to handle them all with efficiency and with care and, safety, and understood them and identified them and all their characteristics and so on. This was cutting edge at the time. Okay. We're talking about, that was 1961. By 1963, I got so much special training. And the other additional person was Dr. Alton Oxner, New Orleans. Oxner Clinic now is just spread all over the place. All right. And the 3 of them were famous at that time. They worked together. These 3 doctors were interested in me because I gave lung cancer to germ-free mice. I said, Dr. James Renier, born in Austria. My grandparents knew him. I was born in South Bend, Indiana, almost across the street from Notre Dame, which is where Dr. Renier's developed his germ-free mice. I had my hands on those mice before anybody. So, I had a fair start. And because I worked with these chambers to smelt magnesium from seawater in a special new way, I had to put argon gas across them. I had these absolutely chambers that could then be used to put germ-free mice in and keep them that way. So, I had I had equipment way beyond what you might think I might have access to. And my father, of course, making sure I didn't get blown up, because one little bit of oxygen, get in with that magnesium and boom, okay, goodbye, Judy. So, my dad didn't want to see me disfigured for life or anything, or dead. So these chambers were absolutely airtight and germ-free, of course, you see. So I could do this, work with germ-free mice. And what did I do? I used cigarette products and made an aerosol. Now, if you should know now, viruses travel by aerosol very easily. Well, back then I didn't know what I was doing that way, but I sure was able to give them cancer, lung cancer. So we got these 3 doctors, Moore and Deal and Oxner, going around and testifying against the Tobacco Institute, saying, look, smoking can cause cancer, but they didn't have any proof. They were very excited to see that I could give germ-free mice lung cancer in only 7 days. If you can imagine, nobody had done that. It took Dr. Grace worked. I have the documents on it. It took him 4 years to duplicate what I did, and I did it in 7 days, of course. But it took about a year for me to figure out how to do it. Why can I do that so fast? Because I wasn't taught to think like they were. I looked at all this and I didn't think I have to have control. I have to have permission to use this. I cannot use that because that doesn't work. This might get contaminated. Hell, excuse my language, but I just poured right into it, and God bless me, really. But the bottom
And
line
Judyth,
is
how old are you during this time?
17. So then I get 2 years of special training, and in the newspapers it says she's been given the assignment to make cancer more deadly. And I said, why do you want me to do that? I mean, these wonderful doctors. Oh, they love me because had done this with cigarette products, so they had special interest in me. It's very underestimate the value of what I had done that way. But they never would have known about me, but I crashed one of their important seminars. Even my own doctors who had been trained at Oak Ridge couldn't get in. So I crashed it, and they were going to arrest me. But I wanted them to see my work. Anyway, when the police were about to take me out, at the front of the stage, Dr. Deal said, wait a minute, and Dr. Robinson with him, Sir Robert Robinson, Nobel Prize winner in chemistry, was fascinated that I was there, and so was Dr. Harold Urey from the University of Chicago, another Nobel Prize winner in chemistry. All three of them just said, bring her up here. And then Dr. Moore was on stage. So any rate, to make a long story short, Dr. Moore, who was a pilot, went and flew to New Orleans after they saw my work. They wanted to see my lab and everything, but they saw my papers and all the stuff I had. And then he brought back Dr. Oxner, and they went to my school, and they, wow, this is fantastic, incredible, and all that. And then they closed it down. It was so dangerous. They said, we got to close it down. So
real quick, Judyth, I have a question from someone in the audience named Sally,
yes.
who she was really excited to see this.
So this is, you're 17 at this time.
Can you hear
So
me?
how old were you when you got to New Orleans?
Can you hear
19.
me, Ariel?
Can't
Yes.
hear me?
Can you hear me?
Hold on. You go ahead, Deb.
Okay. The question though from the audience was Dr. George Moore, is that the same Dr. Moore? If you know, if not, it's okay. That was in MK Ultra. I guess there's a Dr. Moore highly associated with MK Ultra. Do you know? If maybe
Moore and all them, the Dr. George Moore we're talking about was always at. However, he knew Sutherland, and others who were, and they knew these people, but he wasn't directly involved
okay.
himself in that.
Thank
But
you.
I did run into these people later. Yeah. So anyway, so now let's fast forward to New Orleans. I've tried to give a background here that I think had to be necessary because too many critics have said she claims she went straight from high school to New Orleans. That's ridiculous, of course. I had a lot of this extra training and everything, and it was pretty. I even got to present a paper and everything. I actually made a breakthrough, and that's important. That is, they were working. George Moore was working at the time on what's called today it's called the RPMI 1640 formula. Is still being used. It's the best formula there is for growing cancer. I helped develop it, enhance it. I have the papers there. You can see one of them in my book. And I have memorized the formula. And that's one of the reasons he brought me to New Orleans. I knew a formula that could grow cancer faster than anything. And I had actually perfected it even a little bit further when I was at Fort Wayne, Indiana, where Eli Lilly was messing with me there. Okay. So anyway, in between, my father had decided, because I wanted to be a nun, that he was going to tell me all about why God doesn't exist and everything else. He had pretended to be Catholic. Anyway, he got me and locked me up. I mean, literally kidnapped me so I couldn't become a nun. And that turned me into an atheist. And I thought, I offered my life to God. And what did he do? He had my dad kidnap me and take me out of all this training and everything and lock me up at home and say, you're going to run my business because I want to go and fish and all that. And I'm drinking a lot. And you always have my income tax. You know how to handle it all. And, well, and besides, he says, you're a woman. They'll never let you become anything. Boy, in a way, that came out to be true. We have Dr. Alton Oxner, who asked me to come to New Orleans, promised me I would have fast track into Tulane Medical School. Just skip a couple of years, what the heck, and all that. And they'd already, by the way, scholarships galore, and didn't. All my records, you understand, have been completely changed around. I can't get a birth certificate. The only birth certificates I have say female infant on them, So And even Exxon was, with all their power, finally got me it's all tattered now, a legitimate, years afterwards, birth certificate. But when I tried to get a new one, it doesn't come up. I don't know how Exxon did it, but Exxon has their special ways, you know. All right, anyway, here I am in New Orleans. I have come a couple of weeks early now. Understand at University of Florida, Senator Smathers, when he found out I was locked up, my grandfather and my aunt drove me secretly out of there. And my Senator Smathers had an already standing scholarship. They put me in February. Now I could imagine if you who gets to go into college. You know, it's already been going on since January, and that's so. I mean, irregular things, illegal things happen all the time. If the CIA wants you to be a certain place, I want to tell you right now. So it didn't matter that it's February. I mean, like February 15th or so, and I am suddenly able to start all over again as if I just got there in January and they laundered my records, and so on. So, and of course, since then they've re-laundered them in a different direction. That's what they do, you know. At any rate, here I am. I'm um, rescued, and at University of Florida, I get special because my dad came to try and arrest me because I was under 21, and at that time they had he said I was a runaway and he wanted me back, and all that. And Marion Brady, I'm sorry I'm going into all these details, but you got to understand why I even wanted to stay in New
No,
Orleans.
we want it all.
Right, Marion Brady was a sergeant in the Marines before she became dean of women, the first dean of women at University of Florida. Oh, and I had so many boyfriends. I loved the boys. I always did. I was always a good girl. I would tell one of my boyfriends, protect me from them, from the others. I'd tell them all that. So I'd have 5 or 6 guys. Why so many? Because University of Florida at that time only been about 10 years, which we call co-ed. So there are tons more guys, and they're smart. And I'm telling you, um, it's not that easy to find somebody with compatible IQ. Like, by the way, Lee Oswald's IQ was within 2 standard deviations of mine. And that's with incompatible. Oh no, they say he had an IQ of 118. That's absurd because you see, he had dyslexia. Today, if they'd given him time to figure out a 6 was not a 9 in the math part and stuff like that, he scored 135, 138. That's completely compatible with 160.
I
Just
think
like I
that's
was,
normal.
yeah.
That speech impediment problem, because is what happens. Because I'm not going to disclose it. I don't want to make anyone feel weird, but I have a decent IQ. I'll put it that way. And I had the same problem, dyslexia. And what I found out later reviewing it is I was reading too fast to be able to compute it out when I was reading out loud, and when I was reading it to somebody else or anything, I was just too fast. So his brain was probably processing
Oh,
too
he was
fast.
great. Read like he read at least 40 books that summer. Then I knew him. I mean, if you can imagine, he was reading constantly, and he retained it. And by the way, he had wonderful eye. Now he had bad ears. His left ear he'd had a lot of mastoidectomy and so on, and he had lost a lot of the hearing in his left ear. He wanted to be a pilot, but that ruined it. But boy, I want to tell you, his eyes. He could read a newspaper from across the street. He had eagle eyes. I mean, that is really, really important if you're a spy, and you don't want people to know that, of course. But what eyes he had. And by the way, they're very cute eyes as well, like puppy dog eyes. Yeah. And how did they first use Lee Oswald? As he told me, because I said, you're incredible, Lee. You're just absolutely, you're so tender and gentle and everything. Now, understand that I was attracted at University of Florida to the smartest guy. His IQ was so high, it was classified. I'm not kidding. 186, it turned out, okay?
What?
And he had nobody he could talk to. Oh, he's my husband, my former husband. He did so many patents for Exxon, and they may deny it now, but did you guys ever see Jurassic Park, the movie?
Yeah.
Remember that skeleton said, now we don't need to go and dig, we can use geophys now? Well, he was this guy. He's the one who invented that seismic imagery that's being used everywhere all over the world. Yeah.
Oh, your husband?
Yeah.
Wow.
He was the foremost seismologist you can imagine. And even today, even though he's been dead a while and he retired and everything, and by the way, I left him, had to finally, because he became worse and worse and worse. Well, this genius just couldn't really, shall we say, get along very well. And I had to help him all the time so he wouldn't get fired just because he just plain couldn't get, like one of the people that he was over committed suicide because of his lack of sensitivity. It's very sad.
Yeah, no,
It's,
geniuses don't have a filter.
Well,
So,
there's how do you relate to somebody when you think of IQ? The difference in scale between the average in America, it's 97.9 or 8 for the average. Different states higher than others, and then like you think China, right, or Japan, they have higher than 100, 101, and then Japan 105, right?
yeah,
But the difference between that and like 120 and 100 is essentially the difference between America's average and what they consider legally retarded. That difference is that big on both sides. It doesn't just negatively affect. So even if you're 120, talking to somebody else who's 140, you guys might not have compatibility perfectly because it's just
that's right.
that's a quick brain. It's very quick processing. It bypasses emotions sometimes because the information takes precedence. And so it's not good for social context to be a
Well, I can see
140 talking to 100.
you have a high IQ. That's obvious. And
Thanks.
no, it's true. She's got it. And when you've got it, as you know, that doesn't mean that you can't be popular or have lots of friends. That is a misnomer. That's not true. I had a lot of friends and all that. But frankly, I had to act at their level and have them. You know what I mean?
yes,
You're
yes,
going
so,
to the party. You can't talk about geophysics. Or
So you would say you guys had good mental compatibility, you and Lee.
well, Robert could hardly have anybody he could actually communicate with. And I was about the best he could find, I suppose. But on top of that, he was over 6 feet, curly black hair, and blue eyes, and he was cute. Now and I,
That's
everybody
dangerous.
was stupid compared to him. You're so stupid. I mean, he could beat me in chess. Nobody could beat me in chess. It was like that. And and then finally, because I was no longer a Catholic, I was an atheist. It took a long time because I had strong feelings and all that, but he finally broke me. He actually drove off all my other boyfriends, dominated them. I thought, wow, this guy's got great genes. He's got great brains. Yeah, he's a little difficult to get along with, but so am I if I'm not careful with people. You mustn't say, gee, you're stupid to somebody. I have learned so much. I want to share just one little thing with you. Um, Later on, for 9 years, I would go at least once or twice a month to the Richmond School for what they call retarded at the time. And there I was assigned to this older man, and we would work a puzzle. I'd work, with him. I'd congratulate him when he was so happy because he finished the puzzle. People, it was the same puzzle all 9 years. All 9 years. And he never realized it because he was so retarded. We're not supposed to use the word retarded, but that's what it was.
oh my
But
God.
this man was happy. This man made other people happy. He had some gifts in singing. He could memorize certain songs. And at Christmas, his voice was melodious and beautiful in a choir. We just because he couldn't put two and two together, and he literally had to have someone tell him what pants, and the shirt didn't belong on his legs and the pants didn't belong on his arms. If you just forget that and see the other gifts he had and his sweetness and the way animals loved him and so on, all of us have a place in God's kingdom. All of us. Oh, by the way, I was atheist then, not anymore. I mean, the Lord fixed that real good. Uh, I
Do that.
I was dreaming of a pizza and minding my own business. I was pregnant, and all of a sudden, wham! He came and appeared to me in a dream that completely, instantly, I worshipped him. You don't say, "Hey, will I? Am I good?" No, bam! You're on your knee. You are completely. I was anyway, totally overwhelmed. And one of the things that the Lord taught me, as far as the brilliant man that I was married to for 24 years, because I was forced to stay with him that long for my safety and everything. Brilliant as he was and smart as I'm supposed to be, the Lord made it clear that this man that I had worked with for 9 years, my level of intelligence compared to his and God, there was no difference between us in God's eyes, between him and me or Robert Baker. All right. But the beauty of it is that he respects us where we are. We have responsibility wherever we've been placed to use our talents and what we call the full measure of our endowment of our creation. We are responsible for using what we've been given. We are going to be, the more intelligence you have better uh, you better employ it properly. All right, now back to New Orleans. So I am now brought into New Orleans. I have the special um, knowledge. I have the formula. I can handle very dangerous viruses. When I was at University of Florida and Marion Brady locked the doors because my father was going to come get me, she had to emancipate me. It's called, "We've got to get you jobs right away." And I said, "Well, I've got these scholarships." She looked them all up. Didn't take that long. She had a notary there, and she assigned me to three labs. One was nutrition lab, one was a biology lab, and one was a chemistry lab. I got into three labs with all my grants that came with me. Okay, and by the way, they were in the paper and all that. I never even had to fill out any applications for any college. Everybody wanted me, that kind of thing. I never filled out a single application anywhere. And until after I arrived, when I had to fill out something to say I was there, that kind of thing. But what I think is fascinating is that in all the stuff we're talking about, so I was in three labs, and all I had to do was do a little work that proved I was emancipated, and I could get stipends for that work, and Dad couldn't get me and take me away because I was free. I was free, and so she did that for me. But by being in three labs, I got a variety, much wider variety than I might have been because at the same time I have access and privileges at Shands Hospital. Well, put it all together, and I made for example, a new blood test to detect cancer in your bloodstream, which they have duplicating. By the way, as you can tell, of course, I was kicked out of cancer research, and I could talk about how that happened. It happened because I had ethics. That's the bottom line. Not wanting to use prisoners who were not being told that they're volunteering for something that if it works is going to kill them. And they couldn't kill me or get rid of me. Can you imagine? I had all these newspaper articles, and can you imagine people saying, "Wait a minute, what happened to Judyth Baker? She died in New Orleans?" Or what happened? So they made sure that when I was kicked out, that I went to a really fancy lab that was with NASA, NASA contracts and stuff like that. And you'll see that other people in cover jobs with Lee and me, they went to NASA right after Riley, where the cover jobs are being, where we were. Cover jobs are important because if you're doing something that's really classified, they want to make sure that your source of money is coming from somewhere and it's not going to be CIA. Okay, you've got to have something. So that's what we had, and I was able to sign Lee out from his job there. He would sign in any old time. Can you imagine? He's supposed to be working 40 hours. All the time, 7 out of 11 times, they had to bring the record to me to say that he had been there 40 hours and he never was, and sign him off with my J and all that. So I've got all these records showing that 7 out of 11 times they could not find him often enough to say that he'd been there 40 hours, in any particular week. So that went on for 11 weeks, for example. And so I have all the documents showing that we were hired the same day. We were at a small called Standard Coffee Company, and we were there. Our records got laundered. 1 week later, together, the records showed we were transferred over to Riley. The day that he was fired, they put an ad to get rid of me. Hire somebody else. But I was actually there for a little longer. So the day he was arrested, August 9th, that's the day they fired me because that looked really bad that I was seen with him. So I have my check from Riley showing August 9th, the same day that he was arrested. They terminate me there at Riley's. They were trying to do it earlier, but when they put that ad in on July 19th, when Lee was fired, they forgot one essential thing. They were only paying me minimum wage because I wasn't really trained to be the vice president's secretary. So that was the cover job. And so they had forgotten to go ahead and raise the pay to the proper, and nobody would take the job. So so we have two ads. And this one says good pay, and all that, because they had forgotten that nobody's going to work for minimum wage for vice president of a Riley Coffee Company. All right. So anyway, I've got all that. And one person said, well, we don't have any proof that anybody ever saw you there. Yes, I do. One of the women who worked there, her name is in the book, my books, both books, and finally email saying, yeah, I remember you there, and so on. As I say, everything I'm telling you, I've got backups all the way for everything. Now, how did I meet him? Imagine, if you will, I think I'm in love with Robert Baker, but I'm really in love with sex. Okay. I didn't know the difference. And neither did he.
It was the 60s, to be fair.
That's right. And at that time, I wasn't burning my bra, but I was independent, and I knew everything. You think you're immortal. You think that you can get away with anything too. There are no consequences and so on. Well, I ended up getting a miscarriage. Can you imagine? I was not supposed to be able to have children. I had this terrible problem when I was just 5.5. Lee and I were in the hospital the same age at 5.5. We suffered so much. I can't tell you how many things we had in common. That was just right from the beginning of our lives. We had amazing things that were parallel. I mean, how many people can he run into in the United States who could speak Russian and read Russian? I mean, when he spent 30 months in Russia and was fluent in it. I mean, in New Orleans? How does that happen? Well, it's a long story. But anyway, the long and short of it is that when I came to New Orleans, I thought I was in love with Robert Baker. And it's like this. He said, well, if I decide to come, I'll marry you. And I said, that's great. If you come, I'll decide if I want to marry you. So I buy my own wedding ring. We want birth control pills. That's what we wanted, not necessarily to tie the knot, but only way you're going to get the pills is to tie the knot. So, okay, we'll do it. Since his family's anti-Catholic and my family's anti-Protestant, we didn't want them involved at all. We want to have our fun. Meanwhile, I realized that I've been asked to stay in New Orleans, go to medical school. Well, if I tell Robert that, he's still got a semester or so he has to do before he can graduate. Now, I've already turned him. He was going to be a writer, and the man is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. See, he didn't even understand his own self. So brilliant in mathematics. All I did is introduce him to the computer lab, and that was the end of that. He realized that he should be a scientist instead, and I encouraged him. And so now he's going to graduate in 1.5 semesters with a degree in English. But meanwhile, he's been taking all these courses. He will go ahead and take the GRE, okay, the graduate record exam, having only had 2 courses in geology, and he makes an almost perfect score. Exxon and everybody was all over him like flies over, banana pie. I mean, you wouldn't believe. And here he hadn't even had but a couple courses. So, of course, he's set for life as far as that goes. They want him. He was offered the equivalent of $150,000 a year starting pay. once they saw what he could do. And that man was going to be a writer. So, I mean, he didn't know himself. So we were a good fit that way. I understood him and directed him. Well, I'm talking about direction because now I wanted to come to New Orleans. Now I realized that I've got to be very careful because he's got to finish over there. So I'm telling him, all the areas you'd be. We've got the Vietnam War might be starting. Who knows what? We have the Cuban Missile Crisis. You know, just so he hated ROTC and all that. And special guy, I told you, if he didn't want to go in March, he didn't have to. Now that's how interesting his life was and being handled. He hardly knew it, but I was aware. So anyway, the reason I'm mentioning this, was he coming or was he not? Well, it made me angry because, hey, if he said he'd write every day, maybe he's not going to come. So when I came to New Orleans, I came 2.5 weeks early. And I did that because our school got out on the trimester system. It was brand new. But our grants were only set up for semester. So we were practically penniless in between here because they still hadn't made the grants right. I would have a nice big fat grant when I came back, all right, after the summer because it was in 2 sets. But boy, I was out of money here at this time. I just had $42 left. And I'm not going to go home. I've explained why. So they sent me the ticket. And now understand that since I was 15 and I had all these people telling me what to do and had the lab, but there were always supervision and went to all these science fairs, went around and raised money, hundreds of thousands of dollars for scholarships and things for others and so on. And, there's a young genius and all that. Now, all of a sudden, I arrive at the YWCA 2.5 weeks early, and I think they're going to meet with steak dinner and champagne, and they're just going to treat. They said, "Who are you?" Because my doctors were out of town. Ochsner's Clinic had no records that I had applied for anything because, of course, I had to fill out the forms when I got there. I had to fill them out. And so even though I was told to go to the YWCA, I came 2.5 weeks early. I ended up in a room with 2 strippers, a Playboy Bunny trainee, and a very profane, overweight waitress, and no money. And I'm wondering, my gosh. So I told Robert, please send me a little money. Oh boy, oh my goodness. Well, he's terrible miser. He sent a little drib and drab. I said, okay, they said, one of the Playboy Bunny girls, she said, she had her costume. By the way, when I said that she was fixing her costume, and I had somebody say, they're never allowed to take their costumes home and all that. This girl ripped somehow part of her costume, and she was terrified that she'd be kicked out, so she smuggled it. But she had me try it on. It fit me just great. Said, hey, I know what you can do. I said, no, I don't think I do. I want to wear a cottontail, And then the strippers took me around to their clubs, and I got to meet. And I saw so much human flesh that wasn't on a gurney dead. Uh, I mean, I
That
was used.
happens in New Orleans. I think it's still a thing there.
Yep. And wow, was that an eye opener. But again, I had a normal life. I'm going to back up a little. My family, recognizing that I could do all this stuff, would ask me all kinds of esoteric questions. And I remember my mother said, here's this word, Caniche or something like that. Judy, how's that pronounced? Because it says it's French for water dog. And I said, that must be Kanichi, not Kaniche. I said, Kanichi. There is no such word. And because it was me, they called the poor dog Kanichi, and there's no such name on the planet.
Chien. Yeah, Chien is dog in
Yeah,
French.
water
Chien.
dog. Yeah. So it's Kanichi. And but on the other hand, I've told a story just recently in a different interview. I'm going to say that. So we're like my family. We went in South Bend. They had a robot come to town, and this robot, I mean, it's metal and everything. And this guy had a machine that he, put punch and stuff, and it would do this, that, and the other. And my family, I mean, grandmother, grandfather, everybody's there, aunts, uncles, me, and my sister, and Judy, is that a robot or is that a human? Well, it's all roped off. So I went under the rope and went over and touched it. It was human. This, this is the thing. They got really mad because I broke the rules. It's this thinking, though, by breaking the rules is why I was able to think of different ways than the ways you're taught by Big Pharma and so on. That's why I could do what I did, because I was thinking more in more practical ways. And now that's why I can help people. I want to help people because I understand mRNA. Okay, I understand exactly what these genomes are. I understand what they did. If you're all of the manipulations and everything, and I know where it goes, and I know how it's traced, and I love AI, and I like computers, and so on. And it's disgusting and unconscionable and reckless and foolish what they've done with. We need to ban mRNA. We must, not because it does. It can do everything you want. That's the problem. Also, it can mutate. And because it can mutate, we don't know where it'll end up. I've already predicted, back in 2020, I came to this country. I'd seen the genome before the Chinese got killed who did it, and they changed the genome slightly. To me, it was easy to see what happened. Now, maybe other people couldn't see in the millions of permutations, okay? But I was familiar with those permutations. I have a terrific memory. So when I saw what was going on here in this cleavage area, oh, wow. I realized there's no way that an animal could have survived that. No, it had to be lab. It was like taking a machete to it. It was also crude, crudely done. In other words, the people doing this, creating this, I think they made it so crude to make it look like it was natural, but they overdid it. It's sort of like putting lipstick on a pig, it just isn't, it doesn't belong there. It's obvious when you know what to look for.
So,
So
to clarify what you just said there, because I think that's really
yeah,
valuable to a lot of our listeners, that you think that the genome that the people uploaded after China had given out the correct one, they switched out something, and what they
and
posted.
they changed it. You realize they changed it immediately, but I saw
Yes.
the original, yeah.
And I figured that happened because there's a small period of about 5 days in early January that is unaccounted for with the virus that kind of gets brushed under the rug, and I've always assumed something happened to it in that
Well, actually,
period of time.
this actually happened in
December, yeah.
late November. In
Really?
November,
Oh,
yeah.
wow. Okay.
By the time this stuff gets to the United States, it's so incomplete. Our virologists only got part of it, and so you see over and for a year and a half, incomplete. All the analyses are only doing on the spike protein area. I mean, this is ridiculous.
That's such a small fragment of that entire environment, right? So small.
We never got, not for like a year and a half or something, did we get the entire genome. And then we got, of course, it didn't really resemble the initial. No, it is.
Right. That's what. So what you're saying is that the way it appeared would be either they hacked it because they weren't very good, but they managed to slap it together, or they were doing that to make it look more natural. So a natural origin would be assumed.
I thought it looked like a real anomaly that would be something like a chimera in nature. If you think of it like that, there are too many parts that, no, the animal wouldn't survive. It wouldn't survive. This is where they made the mistake. And you can't make this kind of a massive change. You say, oh, it's from camel or it's from armadillo, whatever you want to call it, all right? Or bat. Had this cross species transfer. That is one of my specialties, and it just couldn't do it and have any kind of survival. And if it doesn't survive,
isn't that what happened with SV40 too? Is it like the when that was detected, didn't it kill a lot of the animals, or it gave a lot of tumors,
right.
didn't it too?
But let me tell you something. I had to actually tell people. I cannot believe that nobody's thought about this, but of all the matrices that you might use, the substrates that you might use to grow polio vaccine viruses on to make the vaccine, you're using chopped up monkey kidneys. The kidney is what sifts out all the viruses that are in the body. It's the filthiest thing you can use. And they chose that? Well, I'm telling you, this was stupid. Now, I'm telling you, you can have somebody say, well, they say use this. Well, who were they? Who decided to use this stuff? It's really sickening. We could have used a broth. We could have used almost anything else that was much more, that was sterile and that would work just fine.
And
They're
that's
using,
exactly why I believe that it was purposefully done, because everyone knows that the kidneys and the
because
liver,
stuff,
that is
yep,
the filter.
that's
Everyone
right.
knows that is
And they
yeah.
got this information from all the work they were doing in Africa. Now, by the way, when we were finished with the classified work we were doing there, and I know this for a fact, we shipped back all the monkeys that were still alive that were infected back to Africa and to Haiti. That way, it looks like it didn't come from us at all. Now, I'm telling you here, these are basic facts, and I really want to get this across. They will tell you, oh, well, we looked at the progression here, the rate of mutation, and it goes back way to the 1930s. No, it didn't. We used a linear particle accelerator and zapped up the mutation rate, and that's put it in high gear. So we got it in a matter of 2 years, did what would have taken like to the 1930s to do. They're assuming that by the natural progression of mutations, of course we zapped it up. We did gain a function, all right? And now we are suffering the consequences in all kinds of directions. There's so much of it around. There are so many biological weapons in the labs. And I could make them. Anybody. Now, don't round me up, folks. Don't do that. I'm not going to do
No, she's not saying she's going to. She's not saying that.
What I'm saying is that easy. For $10,000, you can make your own bioweapon. That is disgusting. Just like for $10,000, you can make almost any explosive.
Yeah, you can make them with household chemicals. Not advising anyone to do
That's
that.
right.
I'm just saying you could very well.
Yeah.
What's in your
Nice
bathroom?
to have a smart
No
lady.
Breaking Bad, guys. No Breaking Bad.
All right. So bottom line, I'm in New Orleans, and I've come with a lot of knowledge, and they had reached an impasse. They couldn't get the cross-species transfer to work. Well, mice are dying like crazy for this stuff, uh, and but the monkeys, they weren't getting it. Wait a minute, you guys, don't you remember what I did? I used germ-free mice. That meant they had no immune system. You've got to bring the immune system down. I had to tell them that. I mean, this is basic. They should have remembered it. It's like, oh, we're following this rule and that, and somehow we can't make the cross. They've got immune systems, folks. So whenever you know about some kind of vaccine coming along and you realize that they have to go and do something about the immune system, it's got to attack the immune system, make a biological weapon work. And that's the clue. What happens to your immune system? Once that's down, I predicted, sad to say, it's all on the record. Maybe that's why I'm getting interviewed so much. Because back in 2020, I sent out 200 handbooks advising ivermectin, advising stay away from remdesivir, saying don't go to the hospitals because they're going to intubate you. Use ultraviolet light, germicidal, not the kind that makes ozone. Okay, you want to have the exact frequency there, germicidal frequency that will kill. And you get outside, get the right UV on your body, your skin, make D3, and above all, whatever you do, make sure your immune system is strong. Stay strong. So, and why?
Would you say that that's the reason why they implemented certain things like the poor food quality we have to reduce the immune system, telling us to stay inside, don't go outside because the sun's going to help?
Yeah, stay inside. So if anybody has COVID, they're going to give it to everybody else in that house. Oh, definitely. And if they're not out in the sun, which kills it, so they're going to arrest people on the beaches, the safest place you can be in all that sun, with the air flowing so that nobody is getting any, and to put masks on so that any kind of bacterial infection you've got, you're going to breathe it in again and over, along with plenty of carbon dioxide, so that your body's getting saturated with way too much carbon dioxide, and you're going to, you're messing everything
I was
up.
falling asleep when I had to wear it. Like I was about to pass out. It was awful. I couldn't do it.
Well, they hurt us a lot. The government is not our friend, as you know by now. And please, whatever you do, please, if you want change, do not vote for the people who have been in charge of all this, because they're still telling you today, take your 9-month-old baby that should have had already 3 COVID shots. Now, who's doing that? Big Pharma loves you. They love the money you make, I should say. Now, I'm going to tell you, and I've told others, and I think it's important. I'm going to get back to Lee, of course, but it's so important that people understand. I'm on X right now. God bless Elon Musk, because the minute he bought Twitter, I got my account back. And that's not a coincidence. That's why you hear me endorsing him so much, because I could see way back when all this started that how he cared about freedom of speech. Without him, I wouldn't have a voice at all. It would be gone, because I've been blocked everywhere else. Material I've had up for 12 and even 15 years, okay? Telling people how to stay healthy. YouTube has eviscerated me. Okay, it's all gone. Not all of it, but most of it. Some of the worst interviews I've ever done are still there. They're rather picky. Yeah, yeah. At any rate, let's go on. So I am in New Orleans, and I've arrived. I've got a fiance, if so to speak. And by the way, Lee would say about that when I told him, I'll marry him if he comes, if he still wants to marry me, or if I still want to marry him. And he said, love unto the death. What a deal. Lee Oswald had been trained. He quit smoking, he quit drinking in the Marines when he said he was interested, and they wanted him because of his characteristics and his intelligence and everything to become a spy. And he quit drinking, he quit smoking. And what's the first thing they did? They trained him to be a seducer of women. That's the young man that met me in New Orleans.
Lucky for you.
Oh, boy, was I lucky.
So
They made
that's spy 101. You have to be able to be a seducer. Is
that's one of the things they look for. They look for, somebody who's likable very much, and for all levels, very
Yeah.
people.
Okay.
So no one's
vilifying him. They're trying to say no, wasn't friendly. Well, once he's involved in all this, he can't make new friends, because they're going to say, hey, let's go out for a beer, and he's got to meet somebody secretly. No, so he couldn't make new friends then, and that was against all the way he felt inside. He had a great sense of humor. He was very sociable. And again, his first assignments were seducing Japanese women who were highly trained call girls. I mean, they're equivalent today of being paid $500 a night, and he makes the equivalent of $800 a month. Okay. Now, how did he do that? Well, they made his clothes for him. They gave him the money, of course. And the women started falling in love with him. One of them he even brought back to camp to show her off. I mean, how did this guy do this? And by the way, you think he's scrawny? No, actually, he was very much. The thing is that they show these autopsy photos of him. He had been bled out. When you pump up your muscles with a lot of blood. Well, they didn't even know, his wife didn't even know it was him, because so much blood had been drained out of his face. He's died of hemorrhage, you see, from being shot in the abdomen. And when they opened him up, the blood just flooded all over the floor and everything, you understand?
It's okay, Judyth. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, we're here. Take your time. First of all, I think that you are one of the most amazing storytellers. I love the way that you make it so visual for all of us, and I know that this is very hard for you. So please take as much time as you need.
I'll never. I'll love him for every minute I'm still breathing. I'll love him forever and ever and ever. And he was a wonderful patriot, and he trusted some really bad people. And because he had been able to trust them before, how could he not know? At any rate, so what's interesting is that one of the women Japanese women he fell in love with, and with him, they beat her because she wanted to refuse doing what she was doing, you know. And he had to leave her behind for more training. And he said, never again. When he looked at me, he said, never again. He said, no matter what, he said, I'm not going to lose you, you know. And he was forced, don't get me wrong, he came to love Marina Prusakova over there in, you know, in Belarus, in Minsk. She came from St. Petersburg, that is Leningrad at the time, and had the best King's English, so to speak. And he's speaking with what we would call hillbilly. He's speaking Belarusian Russian perfectly. But it's, hey, y'all, how you doing? That kind of, in comparison with 7 years ago, you know. So she would make fun of his Russian, even though it was perfect. Now, how do we know it was so perfect? Of course, I knew it was really, really good. I knew very little conversational Russian. Most of my Russian training had been so I could read cancer uh, papers, you know, that were in Russian, that kind of thing, and in other languages. So that was important. Now, in Lee's case, his best friend, his name's George de Mohrenschildt. George de Mohrenschildt at that time had already just moved to, yeah, well now, we never had a photo taken together, but that Paul Wilson has done this. And that came from photographs of both of us, you know. And I told him Lee would do that, put his finger on my chin like that and give me that cute little smile. And he did it. He made it. He made the picture. I just love it.
That's awesome. That's beautiful.
And it was just like that for us. We hit it off so well. And as I said, his IQ was compatible with mine because within 2 standard deviations. After that, no, you're going to be bored or whatever. No, he was good in chess and everything. And he so seduced me in his own way that he even beat me once in chess and so on, you know. So that was clever of him. He knew how to put a hand on my leg and all that, and then I get all scrambled and I couldn't think, and he'd win.
What year was it that you guys started your relationship?
All right, we met on April 26, 1963. What happened is that I'd taken this profane. I turned down the offers of the other jobs that I've got to have money for a couple of weeks anyway in case of emergency, and they're going to be out of town until 10th or so of May. I'm here on the 19th of April. I mean, what am I going to do, you know? And so on top of that, his name was Judyth Vary, but you have to understand that CIA, when they're doing this project, they have a ring of labs. No one lab was doing this. But it was neat to know. They didn't know what anybody else was doing in that segment. But you have to have it all come together, and you don't want to have to come together with one of these labs where they can talk to each other. So they used Judyth Vary, who was not in that. And Dr. Mary Sherman was in charge of the whole thing with Dr. Oxner. Sherman is what is important to me. One of the premier cancer researchers really in the United States, maybe in the world. And you can read all about her in Edward Haslam's book. It's wonderful, called Dr. Mary's Monkey. The original was called Mary, Fairy, and the Monkey Virus. So you see, he found out, well, his father worked with Dr. Sherman. Now, people said, well, you don't have any proof that Dr. Sherman never knew Judyth Vary. Well, now a witness. I say all these witnesses keep coming out, you know. So we have Redicardo, and his father was an orthopedic surgeon and also interested in cancer, who worked with Dr. Mary Sherman. And he is the one who introduced Dr. Sherman to Judyth Vary. Judyth Vary is in the film JFK. I mean, that just came out last year. I mean, all these things keep coming out, and he's on record. And said to, you know, we've got a tape and everything filmed. And yeah.
Oh, sorry. Ooh, that's really bad. Do you hear that?
Yeah.
No, I don't hear it.
I think it's because Judith's mic is open. I think I'm not sure why it keeps doing that.
Well, we have things that happen. Sometimes they get cut off even and everything. I hope it doesn't get any worse.
Okay. Yeah, a little bit better.
I'll back
you can
up.
hear me. Okay.
That
There's
help?
the I know that the special virus cancer or leukemia program didn't start till 1964. Do you know what they would have called these programs prior?
Um, 64, some of this coming out. Of course, they were doing this before that. We were, oh gosh, the leukemia stuff. Even in 61, I know that was going on at Roswell Park, for example. And uh, what I was interested in was tagging with radioactive iodine. I would tag cancer cells, and I was running them through and see how long it took your body to sift it out. And you have to do it within a certain time. If your body can't sift out the cancer cell, if you're going to inject somebody with even super cancer cells, they're even far more powerful. If if that body can't get rid of what I've injected, then you know they're going to die from what you've injected them with. So that was what the criterion was that we were using on what I had developed. And the reason I'm talking about that is that uh, in the end, we would have to, that's my kitty cat meowing.
My
Um,
cat's doing the same thing because I got to feed her, and but I'm listening on with bated breath, so she's meowing at me.
all right. So anyway, back to where it all started. I'm going every day. Where's my fiance's letter? He said he'd write every day, and I need some money. He said, send me some money. Help. Boy, I'm mad. So much for love. There's no letter. I turn around. There's this young man. Looks kind of nice. He doesn't look like the half drunk uh, guys that tried to paw all over me at the stripping places, at the clubs. I got handled like you wouldn't believe. I mean, I don't know how those girls took it. And they thought I was one of them that even, like off duty or whatever, because I was with them. I learned so much, and I learned who Jack Ruby was, and Jack Ruby was so much more important than you'd ever believe from the way the Warren Commission did it. And Guy Bannister, somebody else you don't know what I'm talking about, but uh, Guy Bannister, we called the building he worked that he had his investigative agency in that ran all the anti-Castro stuff that was going on. Okay, we called it Bannister's building, but the Warren Commission calls it the Newman building because that guy, sometime after Bannister had already established himself there, bought the building. They don't want you to know about Bannister, and they don't want you to know about the building because on the third floor is where all the war material was being kept. They never talk about the third floor. I was up there. And of course, right after the Kennedy assassination, they demolished the building. So nobody's ever going to think about it again. And by the way, by then, Guy Bannister in June of 64 is dead. Mary Sherman, my dear friend, who was the cancer research specialist, was dead in July of 1964. Hugh Ward, Guy Bannister's pilot, at the end of April, going into May, he's been exploded along with the mayor of New Orleans. These people knew too much, and I knew them, and they're dead. Everybody I worked with ended up murdered, including David Ferry. And I have a book about David Ferry to prove that he would. But I've buried it's in the appendix. If you're smart enough, you're going to go to the book David Ferry, Mafia Pilot, and you're going to look in the appendix, and I can prove that he was murdered. But I don't put it out there in general because it's a little too complicated for.
He died of cancer, fast-acting cancer, correct? And he claimed that they had poisoned him and somehow gave him that cancer, right?
No, that's Jack Ruby.
That was Jack Ruby. Okay, it was one of the two, and okay,
Well,
I get it.
it's interesting that the National Archives helped me. They actually called me when Jack Ruby's. They were angry because online some of my documents have been altered, and then they said, "Look, she's lying." They altered documents from the National Archives, and they didn't like that very much. So when they got this big, thick, 2-inch thick record, all the hospital records of Jack Ruby, that was just like 4 or 5 years ago. Okay, called me up and said, this guy did. He said, come, if you fly here, you're going to see this first, because what they've done to you. I thought, isn't that wonderful? So I did. I flew in. I had to borrow to get there. I unstapled that thing. I was the first one to unstaple those. Can you imagine this big, huge staple? And started Xeroxing one after, 25 cents a page. But anyway, one after the other after the other. Then I stopped. There is something is in my book. Okay, my new book, which is Lee Harvey, Oswald, and Me. You can get it at Amazon. Please do see. The truth is in the book. They can change things online, but they can't change the printed page. Here's this sheet. It's in blue because that's what National Archives does. They print everything in blue. And I'm looking, and I know my stats. I know what it means when I see an X-ray, a 360. You know what 360s are? Is every part of your body is covered with X-ray. And to see that he got not just multiple 360s, but you only need like twice. In 22 days, Jack Ruby got over 500 X-rays with the primitive type of X-ray machines they had back in the 60s. They burned him alive. You know what happened? He was injected with cancer cells, our cancer cells. He knew it. He knew it because we had worked with Dr. Southern. Southern was uncovered for having injected Jewish Holocaust patients that were in the hospital in New York, okay, with our stuff. And he injected into their little bodies, into their arms and buttocks and so on, and it just made necrotic material. In other words, weak as they were, they were able to fight off even our deadly cancer, okay? So then we knew that we had to inject it into the bloodstream. Now, Jack Ruby knew these things. Why he knew these, it's a long story. Again, you'd have to understand the connection between the mafia, the CIA at that time, and wanting to get rid of Castro, and the money, the big money that was going around, and what you had to tell people of certain things so they knew what you were doing at certain levels. You don't want anybody to inject you, okay, and get rid of you. So he knew that if the bore of the needle is big enough, because if it's a regular needle, cancer cells are like jelly that stage, and they will get stuck in the needle. It has to be a bigger needle, and it has to go in the bloodstream. So Jack Ruby knew he was being injected with cancer cells. Nobody would listen to him, of course. But now get this. All of a sudden they realize, look, this stuff kills in 28 days. They've got to make him die before 28 days, of something else, like blood clots or whatever. Okay, something else, because otherwise they're really going to look at that cancer. As they look at that cancer, they're going to find something they never saw before in their lives. You don't want that to happen. They only want an ordinary cursory examination of the cancer. Oh, it came from the pancreas. Hey, the autopsy shows this pancreas is barely affected. It couldn't have started with the pancreas, all right? It couldn't have. But yes, we started with pancreatic cancer because that is still the most almost incurable cancer you can imagine. It still has only a 6% survival rate, and so help me, I think those are just misdiagnoses. They didn't have pancreatic cancer to begin with, it just spread there later. No, we still, even to this day, we have been able to do nothing with pancreatic cancer. That's why we chose it. And we mutated that thing like you wouldn't believe. But let's go back to Jack Ruby. If they
I had a
see
question from
yeah.
the audience about Jack Ruby. Somebody had asked, was Ruby an agent with the CIA as well?
Oh, yes. Look, they're going to hide these things. They do have on record that the FBI said that Jack Ruby asked them 6 or 7 times, could he be an agent? And they turned him down. Oh, yeah, they do that with mafia all the time. Yeah, right. So he actually had been in the when he was in the armed forces. I'm not sure it was whether it was Army, or I should have looked at the record more carefully. But he was an airplane mechanic, and so he was always a patriotic type of guy and everything like that. Was he an agent? He was at least an informant with the CIA, and he certainly knew was a liaison between mafia and because they had money. Why would they want to have Castro killed by biological methods? Because they're not going to be blamed either. You think they want to go in? They're being paid a lot of money, so they're supposed to shoot Castro, and we know that Vesiana, for example, with what the group that he was with, all right, and was in charge of, shot a bazooka at at Castro. That didn't work very well. They tried so many ways, different ways, and the mafia really is not interested in killing Castro that fast. Why? Because they're not going to get any money anymore from the government for trying to kill him. You, why don't they use their heads instead of saying you've got to kill him by such and such a date or you don't get any money? But they keep paying him money, and they keep failing. Of course. So they're interested in any way that Castro can be get out of the way. That's going to take a little time, or it might not work, and that's going to extend their period for them that they keep getting awarded. Like Johnny Roselli was the head of that thing. When everything failed in the end, Roselli is just chopped up in pieces and done away with. And of course, the government says, "Oh, how'd that happen? They didn't protect him." No, that's them, and they betray all the time. At any rate, Lee, again, remember, he was trained to seduce beautiful women and all that. And I'm going back to George de Mohrenschildt now. That was his good friend. Why? George was born, the Baron was born only miles from Belarus in Minsk, close to Minsk, where Lee learned to speak his hillbilly Russian. So he was saying, what's the matter with his wife making fun of me? His Russian is perfect. It's Minsk Russian, okay? So de Mohrenschildt he knew at least an absolutely excellent Russian. It's just in the wrong accent, just the wrong accent. Like John F. Kennedy certainly doesn't sound like someone that, in Massachusetts accent that he had. Certainly doesn't compare to Texas drawl. It just doesn't. You can still have wonderful vocabulary and everything, but they are different.
Those little inflections in our tones, it really makes a huge difference.
So she made fun of him, and it made de Mohrenschildt angry at her that Marina would be that, because she had the great, wonderful. So when I was Lee, by the way, he would go to Tulane listening room and get these records out that had Leningrad. He was wiping out his accent as fast as he could, so he'd have an accent that she would make fun of. I want you to know that on the side. Wasn't it Mary's Maid in Heaven? Not really. She wanted to go to the United States. She made promises to the government. Of course, they never would let her out unless she said she'd be a spy for them. So what does Lee do? Say, oh, this mean Lee Oswald. He keeps her locked up. He won't let her have friends. She won't let her learn English. It saved her life. It saved her life because she didn't have any friends. She did that were, significant, except for one who was a CIA agent, Payne. And of course, not only no friends like it, she actually did know a lot more English than she ever let on. But let's face it, she had nobody to talk to, and because of that, even the Warren Commission couldn't drag her along into it and say we're going to get rid of both of them. Saved her life. But oh no, he's mean and horrible for what he did. I mean, he had to do that to keep her out of his business and out of everybody else's way. But he loved her because he liked her. He never would have married her at all, But it was he would have been deported if he didn't marry somebody. You can't live in more than 2 years in a country and expect they're going to keep you. Now, Lee had an interesting way of handling it. Now, if you're a spy, you would think that, you're going to find out stuff about people in their country and all that. You don't expect them to praise the United States, and that's what he did. By doing that, it completely disarmed them to thinking that, of course, it can't be a spy. This guy is openly praising the United States, and, he's stupid. He acted stupid as well. And I'll never forget, he told me once we had to go in an important meeting. It was about gun running, and it's in my book. And we had to meet at Antoine's. And I'm sitting there with these business people, and they have Lee involved because he will be one of those in charge of, it's a long story. But the long and the short of it is this. He said, now you have to act like a dumb broad. and don't talk. I'm not going to be talking. When you don't talk, they forget you're there or they think you're stupid and they'll say things they'll never say if you are engaged in conversation with them. You knew so many. So, for example, here I am, the great Judyth, the researcher, and I'm getting in the car, and it's Carlos Marcello's work car. He had his limos that were big black things stretched with what he called bitches that were inside that, I know because they rolled down the window and offered us cocktails right out of the car at one point when they stopped and saw me and Lee walking together. And those people, if you can imagine, oops, uh-oh, cat is freaking out.
Okay. I have to feed my cat real quick before she kills me because she's meowing through the door like crazy. I'll be right back. You guys keep going. I'm not going to miss anything. I'll be right back.
Well, I'm going to mention how we met.
Yes, continue on.
I love it, and I'll listen to it later. But I already know the story. But please tell the audience because we have over 1.5 thousand people watching right now. So,
God bless
you guys.
Yeah, God bless you all.
Please, if you guys haven't already, please go on Amazon and please purchase Judyth's book with everything in there and all of her receipts that everyone loves to see now.
Please and follow Judyth.
Yes,
it's so easy to find her. She's the only @Judyth. It's just that, nothing else.
I've been there so long, even though they blocked me for so long. Yeah, that I actually have a plain @Judyth. Yeah, and bless you all. It means so much. I don't know. Sometimes I would almost give up and say, God, why am I? How can I keep going? Especially so. Yeah, every time you buy a book, I get something out of that, and that really helps a lot. For example, I can't get any medical insurance in the United States. I'm over 80, and nobody will give it to me. And I was living overseas until I got trapped here by COVID. I lost my home overseas, everything. This Lee Harvey Oswald and Me. Please, let me show you the real book. That's the old one. That went things 10 years old. And as I say,
okay, let me pull it up.
Here it is. So, yeah, Lee Harvey Oswald. I mean, I sent you a thing showing the books I had written. 5 of them.
Right now. 1 second.
So it's Lee Harvey Oswald and Me. This is a hardcover because all the soft covers, they don't want them in the libraries. They wear out and tear up. Okay. So me and Lee have sold many copies, but it's outdated. I have many more witnesses. I even have color photos in here of some of the most important. Well, I can't find them right now, but the photos and everything are clearer. It is on good paper. The other one is on, well, it's paperback, so some of the photos are dark and it's hard to see some of the details. And this has them all, even if, let me see if I can show you while we're waiting for her to come back.
I have them all put up here too, Judyth.
For example, seeing the color checks they have when they're in the color, see? It's a whole different thing. I was even accused of, by the way, they're different colors because like that one that's dark, there was kept separate. That's that August 9th when I kept that separate and got less exposure. But that's the one that says August 9th, the day that Lee was arrested. That's when I was fired. So it's the same day, There are all these coincidences along there. So anyway,
Judyth, I was you were talking about the Cuban Missile Crisis, and I was told something that was really wild. I briefly was telling you about my husband, but he was meeting with some, financial people a few years back, and they were having a conversation about 9/11. And the guy says, no one ever asked where the steel came from for the Twin Towers. And my husband's just like, no, no one has ever asked. And he said that the Twin Towers steel were the melted down tanks that they had for the Cuban Missile Crisis. And that's why the towers crumbled the way that they did because they were not skyscraper material. Do you know about this?
No, I don't. However, I do know, a lot about areas that, because I've been contacted by so many people with irrefutable evidence that this was inside job, and I think all of us who have any kind of modicum of intelligence understand that it's easy to blame anybody but us. But they're the same government that says they had nothing to do with this, the same ones that killed Kennedy, definitely killed Kennedy. And Lee Oswald, when I said back in 1999 that Lee told me in our last conversation, he said, I believe I saved, he's never a braggart. He just said simply, I believe I saved Kennedy's life 3 weeks ago. And when I put that out there, of course, I got lambasted, attacked, and oh, come on, we can believe he's innocent of past. But come on, what do you mean saved his life? Him? That little nobody? That little nobody was so, so smart. You think I would have anything to do with him, or I would defend him like this if he were stupid? And don't get me wrong, it's just we wouldn't have been compatible. I wouldn't have understood him. He wouldn't have understood me. I wouldn't have been interested. So I got to know that he's not anything like he's been portrayed. Sense of humor, like galore. So he could be so funny, just make you laugh. I'll never forget, while we're waiting for her to come back, we're sitting together, and I said, you're so handsome. We're on the bus. We're sitting in the back of the bus because we were pro-civil rights. We sat back there so blacks could sit in front of us. And the blacks knew it and everything. After, I think, as Medgar Evans got killed, we had to sit in the front, near the front, or they would have kicked us, the bus driver would have kicked us off the bus. So anyway, so Lee's sitting next to me. He said, I'm so proud to sit next to you. He said, oh, you are you? Would you be proud of me if I did it? And went like that out the window. I wanted to get up and anyway, I was horribly embarrassed. He made an idiot of himself. It was so cute. But he was like that. He could be so funny.
Judyth, I'm curious.
Yeah.
Do you have any kind of fantasy or idea of what life would look like for you had JFK not been assassinated? What would that have looked like
Oh,
for
yeah.
you?
We were going to, because this is why Mexico City is so important and all that. The reason you get this weird picture that comes, it's not him, when you have Dallas, CIA is asking the CIA in Mexico City to send a picture of Lee Oswald, and they send this weird thing, is not him, because they were compartmentalized to such an extent. It's like need to know only. The people, the CIA in Dallas. Now, David Atlee Phillips knew both, but he's going to keep his mouth shut. And we have others. It's all in the book, by the way. Like, a lot of people know that you might be interested in this. The president of Mexico at that time and the next two presidents all were CIA. Did you know that? It's in my book. And you'll see the records.
I
Yeah.
can believe that. I really can believe that because of all that was North American. There's it's not a
North
compact, but there's
American
another word.
trade
Yep.
agreement with
Yeah,
Canada.
but there was one before that too. I forgot what it was called. It was just a shorter acronym, but yeah, exactly. So they've been trying to take that
Well,
over for a long time.
so so originally our idea was, because I got an awful lot of trouble. We were never supposed to see each other again. That was not going to work because we were really in love. And for many, many reasons, which you'll find out in the book. Like, I could mention one, like I told you about this fancy meal we went to and all that. And I had to act like a bimbo. I said, oh, I get to sit my little fanny down on the Godfather's upholstery. Wow. I was acting like that. and and he said, you little doodle in the head, you have to sit in my lap. And they said, oh, you're going to hate that, Lee. You're just going to hate that. So that was they didn't know I was a scientist and all that kind of thing. And I had, like I said, I had that Playboy buddy figure, and everything at the time. And anyway.
Probably helpful that you were a woman at that time, because they probably didn't take too many women seriously, because not that many had been allowed to matriculate that high up in their careers. And
by acting stupid like that, I was just like candy, eye candy or something for their nice dinner that they're having. And they were very nice to me. But as the dinner wore on, they were drinking more, and then they started telling some off-color jokes. And by the time they made it to Clay Shaw's house, they were zipping and unzipping their pants and making sex jokes. And Lee said, "I don't want you going in there. Let's go walking instead." So we go for a walk, and Jack Ruby threw the car keys, and Lee caught them to the Godfather's car. He said, "Now you're going to be able to sit on the upholstery." Okay, so, but we decided to walk it first, and then we'll go back to the car, and he'd drive me home. This was the idea. As we're walking, we get chocolate Cokes. And by the way, last year, I took people, year before last, excuse me, I took a whole group of researchers because they wanted to find out these different places. And where we got the chocolate Cokes, it was still open, although it was, a pharmacy that had, you could see it's all closed down, but you could still see the machines and everything, where they make their own Cokes. And they had a fountain, said fountain and everything. And even that's in the book here, because that's the kind of thing that every little detail, as I say, I backed up everything I possibly can. And it's amazing it was still there. So we had the chocolate Cokes, and then the theater people were getting out. So we started back. It was about midnight or so. And they're still, whatever they're doing is Clay Shaw's, oops. Well, as we're walking back, all of a sudden this sailor jumps out. And he's got a knife, and I'll never forget, you could see his veins in his throat, and on here, there's bam, 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 and he's red face and all worked up, and I was really, really scared, of course, and he said, "Girlie, give me your purse." And Lee said, just like on the Star Wars movie, he said, "You don't want her purse," just like that. He said, "Give me your wallet," like that, and he said, "Give me your wallet or I'm going to cut your face," is what he said to Lee. Now this guy is like a foot taller than Lee. I mean, I didn't know they allowed them in the Navy that tall, but anyway, he was. He was as tall as they allow, I guess, and big, and drunk and dangerous with his knife, going like that at Lee. And Lee said very calmly, he brings out his wallet, and man, right under his wallet was a switchblade. He went just like that. He said, Lee said so calm and cool. He said, "You may cut my face, but not before I get your balls." And he went like that, and that guy ran like a skunk. Oh, as fast as his tail in the air. Don't you know that he was my hero? So we
I was
jumped
just
in the
about to
car.
say that.
So you
Knight in
were
shining armor.
you were saying that Mexico City was important when I asked you about
Yeah,
what you how
right.
you saw you and Lee.
Okay, yeah. So we have these different things we went through together, all different kinds, and we wanted to be together, and we went and have as many kids as we could. And then we wanted to race horses. He loved horses and things like that. And so we had made a deal with the CIA people he had known anyway, And so when Dallas CIA says, "Send me a picture," they got to pretend he never went there, because we're going to get new names, new passports, new IDs. And so they must pretend he never went. So to this day, they argue, did he go or didn't he? Because you've got two sides fighting each other, you see. That's why it's, to this day, they write books about was he there or not, and so on. Of course he was there, all right? And I was supposed to meet him the day he crossed the border, okay, by bus. And by the way, he flew three cities first to make it look like he never went to Mexico. He also wrote letters to like Philadelphia and New York, to VT Lee and so on, to FPCC and so on, saying, "I'm going to be moving to Philadelphia, or I'm going to be moving to New York, or I'm going to be, anywhere but Mexico." So then when he arrives in Mexico, we can hide and it'll be under, and there are certain things I want all of you to hear. It explains why they said he was acting crazy. He wasn't acting crazy. When he goes to the Russians, it says he wants a transit visa. Don't worry about that. Transit means you're just going through Cuba. He says he's on his way to the USSR. This is ridiculous because he'd already been turned down. Okay, but he's telling them that, saying, I any day is going to come through. No, it had already been turned down. His wife had been accepted, but not him. But he has to say he's going to go to Russia, because really, when he gets on that plane again, just going through Cuba just to drop this stuff off that he was the courier for, he's going to go and drop this off, and then he's really going to go back to Mexico and hides and have this all the secret. So he tells at the Russian embassy, he sits there and puts his gun out. Now, remember, we were going to pretend that we were pro-Castro, we were communist, and that the FBI was after us, and that we had to hide in Mexico. So he says to them, the FBI is after me. Now, nobody's been able to explain why he would say such a crazy thing. It looks like, what do you mean the FBI is after him? I mean, what? This is way before the assassination, and why is he saying that? Well, that's why, okay? Because he's already setting up this background. And that's why, another thing that he said, I've only got 3 days. You've got to get me this, this visa. I said, what are you talking about? You've got like 10 days left on your visa. What do you mean 3 days? Because in 3 days, the biological weapon would have been dead. You had to get it handed off before that. So you've got all kinds of things that I can explain that nobody could understand, because we were going to actually live there. We were going to have kids there. I was going to go to medical school. Dr. Sherman was going to help me. I didn't know she could get murdered. The day that Lee crosses over the border after these plane trips, it took a whole day. He started off in Austin, went to Dallas, then he goes to Houston. Hands off material, gets new material. We think that's how MD Anderson actually got the bioweapon.
Wait, as an MD Anderson, as in who's the Texas
Absolutely.
MD Anderson? That's where,
right.
okay, so that's one and the same. Okay, this makes a lot more
by
sense.
By the way, when I started bringing this stuff out a couple of years ago, because in my book, it was published a couple of years ago, and here it is. It was in the other book too, but it wasn't noticed. But I stressed it more because I was able to get more information. 2017, we got a lot more information. I was able to add that. Remember, all these thousands of documents come out. All they've done is show that Lee is innocent. I mean, there's nothing there that blames Lee for anything. And they even put out 500 pages on somebody called Raul Aparicio. And all kinds of researchers had no idea who he was. And probably the people who released this, it's been so long they've forgotten, but not me. Aparicio was very important because he could have gotten Lee that visa, that transit visa, in 1 day. So it was very, very important. Anyway, that's in the book too.
Real quick, Anderson was who, when he came back and had to go to Austin?
No, on the way. No, on the way to make.
Okay.
They say, look, we got fresher batch here. Let's switch.
So Dr. Anderson was involved in this.
They probably gave him a dummy. How would he know? We think now we never intended this stuff to go to Cuba. We now believe they wouldn't have let it go to Cuba, to anybody in Cuba. We think it got switched then. But we trusted these people, all right? So why do I mention that? Because MD Anderson and Oxner's clinics are now merging. There goes the evidence. Oh, yeah.
Wait, what do you mean now? Like now is in the timeline or now current?
Yeah, they're merging.
Right now, currently.
Yeah.
Okay, real quick. I just, only because you say something that I've tried to bring this up with other people, but they have no idea what I'm talking about. Okay. So I'm assuming this was within the last year, maybe, right? This merges.
Yep.
This with it. Okay, I thought so, because the special immunization program, which is kind of the new ancestor to the special virus cancer program, it's the new. For the first time ever, it had been in the hands of NIH and the Cancer Institute and everything. They just made an announcement a few months ago that nobody found interesting but me. But they decided to change over the entity from the Army and NIH over to the Salk Institute. Yeah, I'll get you the paper for that if you want to see it. It was an announcement.
Of course.
So they're repeating things, is what I'm seeing.
Yeah, pull it up,
the same tricks. I will get it.
Yeah. And so I'm only talking about all these things to save lives. Look, my picture's getting weaker and weaker. I don't know what's going on, but it's getting fading out. My hair is darker. My face is dark. I mean, it's really strange what's happening.
Well, it doesn't look different to me.
Okay, It
Yeah,
doesn't, huh?
yeah, it hasn't changed on my
Well, I can hardly, mine is fading out. I can hardly see myself anymore. Isn't that strange, isn't it? All right. So if you can see me, that's great.
yes,
Okay.
Yeah,
still see
I
you and
see
hear
the
you.
live. I have it on my phone right now, and you look fine. It's hard to tell because this is bright, but
Okay.
um, there you look great.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, a lot better there than I do what I'm seeing.
right.
Yeah,
My
I
hair
think it's not as
almost,
good as it is on here. Yeah.
yeah. All right. Well, that's good because I'm not dying yet. I'm not dying.
No, you are not. No, you are not. And you know what, Judith? I want to get into
Oh, I was gonna say
um
how we met, which I never got to.
what'd you say?
How we met. You had asked me a long time ago about that. But
Right.
again, we were going to live in Mexico. We were going to pretend to be communists and all that, and we were going to be informants for the CIA, the FBI, and so all that was set up. And the day that Lee crossed that night, Lee crossed, got on the bus by in the morning. They hit Laredo, where Lee actually left materials. He said he left money, he left his clothes. After the assassination, the FBI goes and they go to the Laredo's, both of their banks, and they said they found nothing. I don't believe that for a minute. Okay. Why would they go there to begin with? And they said they found nothing in the lockers. How did they know about the lockers? All right. So that shows where, and that Lee also, the investigators said quickie divorces. Now, Lee and I were going to get quickie divorces at the border, and all that, come up there. Just like um, Mickey whatever, Jane Mansfield had done in just 24 hours. So that's what we were going to do. All right. So we had all these plans and everything. And that, in fact, that article on her came out on May 4th, 1963 in the papers. And that's caught our eye. Okay. So anyway, the reason I'm mentioning we had these plans the day that evening when he's crossing the border in Laredo, he calls me. He wasn't supposed to call me until he got there, but he calls now. He says, it looks like Rourke and Sullivan have been shot down. They were supposed to pick me up. This is famous. Alexander Rourke and Jeffrey Sullivan. They hunted for their bodies and everything, and years later they found out. Anyway, they had been shot down. The plane took off very strangely from Belize, in that it tried to land a couple of times. Somebody may have been on board and forced them to fly over Cuban waters, and they got shot down. And they were supposed to pick me up at Eglin Air Force Base. It's all in the book, and I have when that happened, then we realized I wouldn't be able to meet him like as planned. There's another issue about Cancun they bring up, that I said that Lee said we'd go to Cancun. And I said no. We had seen an exhibit at Tulane, at the Latin American Library, because we were planning to live there. So we were looking at all the stuff there, about Mexico and everything. And we realized that there had been an expedition there in July, and here it is August, and they've got it all on. They've got the maps. They said they left food and water behind because they were only there 7 days, but they had a whole bunch of people there excavating. Nobody believed me. Everybody said, "Oh, when you said you're going to go to a fine hotel, that happened to be the Mayaland Hotel I now know. That was at Chichen Itza, and I wanted to climb Chichen Itza. I'm going to leave just a minute. I'm going to show you something that we got. 15 researchers came with me last October, and we went to the Tulane Library, and we found the last written example that this had been on display in August of '63. So I want to show it to you.
Please show it to me.
It's a miracle. It's just a miracle.
Because it's funny listening to your story, because me and my family are in Mexico.
Okay, so here is the bag, and they went in there and they said, "What do you mean?" The guy's name here, okay, Willis Andrews, Wyllys. How'd you know about him? Nobody knows about him. I mean, it was years ago. They had one thing left showing that this actually happened in July of 1963 for 7 days. They excavated it, and they had the maps and everything. I'm going to show you a couple pictures just quickly. So that nobody can live there. They're lying. You can't survive there or anything like that. Well, then how come you have all these workers here? Look, excavating. So they had the food, the water, they had maps, everything. Yes.
Right there.
And that they had a landing strip. So we were planning to meet there. I would be flown there. See, that's where they're going to drop me off. Lee was going to be there. Easy flight for him as well. And from there, we were going to hike for 2 days to Chichen Itza. And he's promised a fine hotel. I thought he was joking, but there is one. It was built in the 1930s, and CIA agents went there all the time. And then we were going to get married in Merida. So anyway, they made fun of all of this and said it's not possible. It's not true. Excavation of this early shell midden at Isla Cancun, Quintana Roo, Mexico. There it is, and the dates and everything, just as I had said. I don't forget. I promised myself I wasn't going to forget the things that Lee said, the things that Lee did, because he was cut off when he was only 24, barely 24 years old. He's had so much smarts, had so many experiences, had given so much to his country, and it trying to turn him into an evil villain. So I memorized everything.
Thank God you did. Thank God we have you here to tell his story because, everyone, to this day, it has not changed in Google. Lee Harvey Oswald is the one who was named as the lone gunman, and I'd like for you to kind of dig into that day. Where were you that day?
Well, I had been kicked out.
Mhm.
I was living at that time. Remember, I tried to meet Lee, and they shot down the plane. But Lee says, "Don't worry, we'll get you on a commercial plane as soon as the things die down a little bit, and get you over." So I had my suitcase packed and everything. My husband, did he mind? As I said, remember, he was trying to ace all these geology courses he took at the last minute long. So he's not there most of the time. He's almost always somewhere else. I'll never forget when Lee and we had the last call. And by the way, I was going to say how we met, and I need to inject it, or we'll never get back to it. But when Robert didn't call, and I turned around and saw this cute guy, and he wasn't drunk and vomiting like some of the other guys I've been seeing, he didn't paw me or anything like that. And there was no ring on his left hand, So I gave him a smile. Right then, I accidentally dropped a newspaper. And I'd been carrying that around because I'd put a coded message in the paper for Robert. I knew his family, we couldn't call each other, so I put this that I'd arrive safely. And I knew his eyes had seen it, so I kissed it with lipstick, and it said Jario to Jaria. Jario, what in the heck is that, And circled it. Lee picks this up, and his eagle eye, of course, he saw this. What's going on here? And then what do? I decided I flirt with him. Now, how do you flirt with a guy and try and get them to answer you? And I said, Karashat Tavarish. I said, well done, comrade. And then when he handed this back to me, I thought he'd say, what did you say? And then I'd say, well, you don't want it. But instead, he said, it's not wise to speak Russian in New Orleans. He said it in Russian. Back to, what? This guy knows Russian? And he's thinking, what? This girl knows Russian? That's how it started. And then as we're walking, I see that he said, I'll walk you back, I better tell him who I am because I don't know who this guy is. Well, maybe we could go around the corner and mug me or something or worse. So I started spouting off, oh, I'm here because of the famous Dr. Mary Sherman. I'm going to be working with you. He says, I was with David Ferry last night. Do you know Dr. Ferry? I said, no. He said, well, he brought up Dr. Sherman. He's working with her. I said, oh, that must be somebody I'm supposed to meet. He said, I think you need to meet him, Well, they had, because David Ferry had been involved in all this. What happened? The FFA, which gives Elon Musk so much trouble, okay, given Ferry trouble because they keep forcing him to fly to Miami to try and get his He wants to get his pilot's license back. And then he's got rows and rows of cancer stuff going on. And so he asked for an assistant. Now we have the name of the assistant. He has come forward. Michael Riconosciotto. I can hardly pronounce his name, all right? But he was a young genius, okay? So, I mean, they use these people like that, okay? Well, he wasn't told. This need to know thing goes, nobody told them who it was, but they're coming. So I show up and I know all this stuff, and they thought I was him. And David Ferry, being a homosexual, thought, oh, they sent a girl, so I won't seduce him. See? So, and then I knew I had been dating in high school and also in college anti-Castro people. And one of them was very important to me. And in fact, we hit it off very well. We might have gotten married, except he told me he came from a very rich family. And because of that, he'd have to be macho and have at least one mistress, or it wouldn't look good. And as I've told others, that was a little too much more information than I
That's
want.
wild. I'm sorry, but that is like,
his name is Antonio Lopez Frisquet. His father was the finance minister of Cuba for Castro. I knew so much inside information about Castro from him and from that those people thought I was involved, that I was the person that was being sent in and could speak Russian and poor Lee and all them. But they told me things they shouldn't have. But by the time the doctors came back, it was too late. And so I got in on the secret side. I was never supposed to be on that side. I was supposed to be on the unwitting side. But it didn't turn out that way because I knew too much. And it wasn't their fault. Yeah, I knew so much. They had no way, speaking Russian, knowing the finance minister's son of Cuba, and all about all kinds of secret things that Tony told me about his dad. He told me about Operation Peter Pan when nobody at that time really knew about that. He was at Ruston College. Ruston College, he and his brother got out with their mother, Helen, who was American. That's why they left. They were afraid something would happen to them during the revolution. And they're waiting, hoping that their father can get out alive because he's CIA secretly. Okay. Yeah. So you've got Tony's father's name was on all of Castro's money, for heaven's sakes. All right. And here I know all this inside stuff. So they made a mistake. They thought I really knew. And I had handed off a letter, by the way. It said, Robert said, you've got to put somebody else's name. Put my friend's Raleigh Rourke, R. Rourke, on the return address for New Orleans. Because if my parents see your name, they're going to think, well, that's why he wants to go to New Orleans. They're going to go and sleep around, or they're going to get married, and they want, And he was supposed to be working with his parents, and he's trying to get out of that. So, so I have R. Rourke for Raleigh. That R looked a lot like a cursive A because I wrote in cursive, see? So it looks like, and Lee thought that was A for Alexander Rourke, that pilot, again, that was going to pick me up with Jeffrey Sullivan. So it looks like I'm sending a letter off for Alexander Rourke to Robert A. Baker at Eglin Air Force Base. Well, that's where Robert's parents were working on housing. But he knew a Robert A. Baker who was a secret agent who was at Eglin Air Force Base. So you put all that together, and that's why they told me things they shouldn't have. And by the time everybody came back, it was too late. And by then, Lee and I were falling in love. We just hit it off immediately. And it was just a match made in heaven. It really was. He told me right away that he wasn't getting along with his wife, but he was going to stick it out with her because he had a little girl and she was pregnant. And he said, well, what I'm really doing, I got her pregnant. He said, this is a little later, he said, so that when we divorce, she'll have the baby in the United States. They will not deport her and my other baby. So that's why he got her pregnant again, not because he wanted to keep her. And I know that sounds cruel and all that, but they fought like cats and dogs. He had George and Morrinshill said, Marina made fun of him, would make fun of his manhood and say, and he said he saw scratches all over Lee's face, and Marina had a black eye, it's that kind of thing going on. Well, that made me horrified, and I said, Lee, I will have nothing to, he actually confessed to me. He said he never thought he would ever do that, but she would say things like, hit him and say, if you don't hit me back, you're not a man, and things like that, you know. It was pretty horrible. Yeah, she antagonized him. Now,
Toxic,
I was
toxic
gonna say,
relationship.
sounds
Mhm.
like
well,
daddy issues.
well, I'll put it this way. That first started when they were still overseas, and she went with her first black eye he gave her to her uncle. And he said, "You had it coming to you, and you know it," because she lived with him. You know, she. Now, don't get me wrong. He should never have done that. And I told him, I have nothing to do. You touch her again. I hear about. I say it's over. He said, I can change. I said, I didn't used to be like that. I can change. I said, well, you have to prove it. He said, I hear one sound, anything, one peep that something. So he'd come over. I say, you didn't hit her, did you? No. He said, no, I'm here. I didn't hit her. He's walked back and forth. He said, she burned the potatoes. I peeled the potatoes. She still burned the potatoes. Things like that, you know, going on.
So Judy, so
So
did your
but
husband and did his wife, did they know about you guys?
no. And, well, I say that. She actually went down to the wrong coffee company because he didn't tell her which one. It wasn't Riley's. She went down to the one he told her, and it was the wrong one with the baby carriage and all that. Another time, she did call Thompson's Restaurant, where David Lewis and Anna Lewis, we double dated with them. And by the way, she's on record 35 minutes or so going into detail about how she was sure I was Lee's mistress and so on. All right. So I mean, I've got all these different witnesses. She's dead now, but she was everywhere. You know, we have all the tapes and film, and there are others too. But the bottom line is that I have to tell you about David Lifton. David Lifton was very angry at me because when my book came out, his got canceled. It got canceled because somebody saw it who hated David Lifton and wanted his book to get canceled. And they called and said, look, this woman has information. He doesn't know anything about New Orleans. She's got it all. You'll be real sorry if you publish this book. It never got published. He never forgave me. And he attacked me until he died. Okay. All the time. But one of the things he said that's really fantastic, he said, this is before he knew about me. He said, something happened somewhere between March of 63 and the rest of his life. Although they had fights and they had hit each other and all that, somehow, for some reason, he never touched her again after he went to New Orleans. He never laid a hand on her again. Somebody explained to me, and boy, did I want to explain to him, but he wouldn't have listened to me. The reason is that he promised he'd never lay a hand on her, and he kept that promise the rest of his life under terrible provocations. And they got along a lot better then. Still, when it
If
came time, yeah. Well, yeah, but he had to really swallow a lot of, guff in the way he looked at it. But on the other hand, they were both very young and all that. And she felt betrayed. She would say that he's promised he was never going to go back to the United States. Come on. She wanted to go to the United States so bad, it was ridiculous. Um, their, their marriage made in heaven was only 6 weeks of knowing each other. And well, part of that time he was in the hospital and she was able to visit him because that's where she worked in the pharmacy. I mean, no, it was all set up, and everything, and they knew it, but they both had good reasons to. He didn't want to get deported, and only soon after they got married, he realized he had to get deported. We had the Eisenhower administration handed everything over to Kennedy. CIA didn't like Kennedy, and there are a lot of things they would not share that the Eisenhower administration knew about. They were terrible, just like they've been with Trump, what happened with Trump. There are a lot of things that Trump was not told by the CIA. They were not his friends. Same thing with Kennedy, very same thing. And the fact of the matter is,
I'm glad you
what?
brought this up. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm glad you brought this up because I wanted to ask you, do you think that if Kennedy hadn't been assassinated, do you think that he would have actually been successful with getting rid of the CIA? Do you
It
think
would
that that's something that can
yeah,
actually happen?
he was setting it up, just like with the feds, with the Federal Reserve. He was actually really printing real money, silver certificates, which Lyndon Johnson immediately got confiscated and destroyed them. And instead of having silver coins, he actually took the silver out of the coins and clad them in 1964. That's what Johnson did immediately. That Johnson is absolutely involved in the Kennedy assassination, 100%. Okay. They couldn't have pulled it off without him. On the other hand, if he wouldn't have done it, they would have had shot him probably in Dealey Plaza too. They were one way or the other. They're going to get rid of Kennedy. Now, the bottom line is, and I think it's very important, is that Lee Oswald loves Kennedy. And Lee Oswald, because of Barry Sherman, who was from Chicago, Jack Ruby, who's from Chicago, and knew Lee from the time Lee was a little kid, because Lee's mother's sister was married to the mob. Lee was a perfect bridge between the mob and the CIA to get a lot of stuff done. He understood both languages, so to speak. And I learned so much from David Ferry. Why could I learn so much from that man, a homosexual? Well, I want to tell you something about him. He wanted to be a priest. I had wanted to be a nun. And when he found out that I was an atheist, he went bananas, and he did everything. He spent hours trying to bring me back into the fold to see me be a Catholic again. So I got to know him very well. It's not like we had nothing in common or all that. He was going to save my soul. The Lord came and did that for me. God be with everybody who's had those experiences with the Lord knows what I'm talking about. There's nothing like it. It's
Yep.
not some kind of imagination or some kind of pipe dream. This is bigger than reality. It's bigger than anything ever happened to me. And he's kept me alive. He's kept my brain going. I mean, 81. I've had people say, "What? What do you mean?" I mean, I only need 3 or 4 hours sleep. It's been that way all my life.
Me too. And my mom was the
But that's the
same
way
way.
it is. When you really, yeah.
And they tell me like so
God,
bad for me, and I'm like, but I can't sleep longer than like 5 is a long
Oh,
night
it's
for
a
me.
waste. Well, yeah, I actually, once in a while, I'll take all of a sudden a long restorative nap. That'll happen once in a blue moon. And it feels so great, and I wake up all dehydrated. I need water, But at any rate, and I care very much about everybody and what they're going through. I want to help them. God has given me many blessings. I've been able to have people call me, and I don't want to get arrested for practicing medicine, but I certainly can lead everyone into looking into the right directions, and we have saved lives. And God has given me the desire of my heart was to cure cancer. I know how to do it. That's the hard part. If you put me in a lab, I could still do it, because that's how close we are, but they won't, because there's no money in it. They have built instead cancer palaces, fill them with specialists. Where are they going to go? All these specialists, all this chemo and everything. Why do you realize how much money is lost if they cure cancer? It's not going to happen. Stop doing these vaccines. Now, I'm not anti-vaccine. I want people to get their tetanus shot. If you get bit by a rabid raccoon, I want you to get your rabies shot. And you can get shots one by one. Again, don't have your children take a bundled shot. And I've been stressing this all year. If you've got mumps, rubella, and measles they give you this one shot. What child ever got mumps, rubella, and measles at the same time? Do you realize what an insult that is to your immune system? How difficult, and why then you have to have boosters? When you get measles, you'll never get measles again if it's nature. And by the way, if you get measles, there seems to be a reason we haven't overcome measles like we have so many other diseases that come and go in the human race. There seems to be a link between that and not being able to develop certain kinds of cancer. So it's like sickle cell anemia helps you so that you can fight sleeping sickness. Same sort of thing. It's like the devil of the deep blue sea, and the deep blue sea, you can swim in it.
Yeah,
So
and it's funny you said that about the river sickness, blind sickness, is because that's what they were treating. They were treating them with the Suramin, and they were also treating a lot of the children who were having side effects to vaccines with Suramin. That's how I learned about it, and that's how I knew that it could combat COVID as well.
right.
You know,
Well, I took ivermectin, and that got me kicked off Facebook. And there are people I was helping. We've had many cures of cancer, and I can't go into detail. I'll just say this: that there use your head. You've got to be wise, and I've got to be wise in what I'm saying. By no means am I saying that I am going around practicing medicine, but I am saying that I can lead people to look into what they should be doing. I know, and and the Lord has helped me save lives, and I'm very grateful for that. I care so much about everybody. I love the love I have in me is huge for humanity, for the human race. And it doesn't matter what happens to me. I don't care anymore. I just want everybody to know that if the messages can get out, please, people, please, like monkeypox. Do you realize how close monkeypox is to smallpox? Now, if you go ahead and get the vaccine for that, I don't want to kick you guys off of Rumble or anything.
No,
We
it'll
gotta,
be kicking me
No,
off
it'll
of
be fine.
YouTube. But I mean, but just go ahead and I'll take the strike for this. Trust me, I'm
And
good.
this is for entertainment purposes only.
Exactly.
So
oh, this is a science fiction movie we're talking about. By the way, I've written a book called Letters to the Cyborgs. I'm very interested in AI and where we're going. The only human I can see right now trying to stop things from getting worse is Musk, and that's why I'm extremely interested in him, because he's creating robots and things that are not in the government. They're not with the military. They don't like that. DARPA has everything, and they're way, way ahead. Okay, way ahead. But I don't want to. I'm digressing from what I was talking about with the getting bundled shots and so on like that. When they're, by the way, they came out just a couple of days ago saying we have now have a cure for ovarian cancer. That's not true. They obtained from Oxford University just simply funding and think that they'll have it in 3 years. And believe you me, they're the ones that did AstraZeneca, which is clot shots. By the way, we're going back to Jack Ruby because all the things I talked about, I tried to bring them back into the conversation. Jack Ruby died on the 22nd day from, it has to be, of course, overdoses of X-ray, but it caused terrible problems with anomalies in the blood. Remember that we were talking about the SV40 monkey virus. The monkey virus, when all chopped up, is a little tiny DNA virus. DNA protein, it's not RNA, folks. And they use that as an adjunct, up to 50% because they can be so dirty. Up to 50% of a shot may have that in it. And that stuff, if you have that much in it, it can reassemble. They say, oh, we've taken out the components. Oh, yeah, all you need is one piece you didn't get out, okay? One piece survived. What are we talking about? If we're talking about SV40 monkey virus, that other ordinary RNA viruses, for example, use formaldehyde for 3 days or 7 days, and it's gone. It takes 30 days or even longer to get rid of SB40. Imagine. So they didn't realize it was in all their like 98 million doses of polio vaccine. And what does it do? Back then, we were able to get 100% of our monkeys died of it within a month. Just if their immune system was pulled down. Pull down the immune system, like you can do with COVID, and if you got the monkey virus in there and you 5 or 6 years after, so you don't connect them, watch out for cancer.
that's how my father died.
I'm
This
sorry.
year in March 25th, he passed away after his 4th shot of these mRNA vaccines because he wouldn't listen to me. And he had cancer remission, and then he got the shots, and he was dead within 4 weeks of his last shot.
Yeah, and my brother, he got the vaccine, he got 2 boosters, and he died of a massive heart attack shortly afterwards. So, you know,
How old was your brother when he got the heart attack?
my brother was 43 years young.
Yep.
43, healthy.
There's an awful lot of this around. And there, so, nattokinase, people use nattokinase to slow down the proliferation of the spike protein that we're talking about. If you could see the insides of some of these kidneys and livers, you see they're covered with like red fur, and it's all spike protein. It's really sort of scary. It's like a nightmare.
I have a
And
question. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, it's okay.
Um, just because of the cancer being brought up, and MD Anderson, because I do so much research, I have a whole array of things I'm connecting here in my head. But
Yeah.
would you think that it's possible, or do you know if it's possible to, because you were working on a weaponizable cancer to kill Castro?
Yeah.
Was that completed in a way that could be done in a variety of cancers, or was it just pancreatic? You guys were like, do you think they
Oh,
would have been able to perfect it?
it wasn't pancreatic anymore. That was our
Okay.
base that we started with. In fact, we didn't care what we had. Understand, we did not care. It's not like you have controls or anything like that. What you're after are results, results, results. That's it.
I
And there's
asked because of glioblastomas, which is the brain
well,
cancer.
that's one of the very common results, glioblastoma.
Thank you.
Over and over again, I see it. Yeah, and it's
Yeah, thank you. That helps a lot.
because remember, but if you go back to the basic pancreatic cancer, we're talking about you're going to look for fluid. That's a fluid buildup, the disease fluid or whatever it is that might be involved. It's pumping it out. That's one of the signatures. Okay, so you're going to see that. You're going to have the structure is going to build up to handle those fluids, and they become cancerous. That's a simple way of looking at it anyway. The bottom line is, what can we do? I'm going to go back to Jack Ruby, because when he died, they pulled out a fibrous, rubbery, long blood clot, just like we have today. That's what killed him. Okay.
Like one of the fibrous plots.
Exactly.
Exactly the same.
Exactly the same.
Was there any? Do you know if? And this is
I
probably
got
asking
I
beyond.
got all these records.
Right. I wanted to know. Do you know who the examiner might have been? Medical examiner for his body.
Well, Nicholas Chetta was the official for almost all of them. By the way, when Jim Garrison was putting all these people together, 5 days after David Ferry's name got in the paper on February 22nd, 1967, they find him dead. 5 days earlier, he had called the DA and said, "I'm a dead man." Of course, he died of natural causes. Yes, of course. Right. But that's not true, and you can see what really happened to him. People, I want to have a little break here in thought. That is, everything we're talking about is evil. Now, God knows what's going on. And if I were still an atheist, I'd say I have no hope, because they can spray this on your food. They can, there are many things they can do. They've developed it far more efficiently now. Don't think they haven't. Even people who are trying very hard to, like ivermectin, how long do you think they're going to let that work? They're going to find a way around it. They will. But they're going to have a really hard time if we start working together. Let me explain. Remember I said I was in a nutrition laboratory? One of the things I had to do was to analyze, remember, Florida is famous for its oranges. Tropicana, I had connections with them in their lab. You wouldn't believe all the connections. But anyway, they wanted to analyze an orange. They get nice, plump, typical orange. And we had about 40 or 50, don't get me wrong, but we just used one. After figuring out all the different ways that you could test it and so on, we imposed all these tests and so on. And one single orange, you get all the value out of it, all the electrolytes, everything, vitamin C, minerals, limonene, which is a very important product, all these kind of things. And so I had kept that record until it got stolen from me a couple of years ago, but I haven't forgotten what it said, because I replicated that analysis and everything with somebody who was able to get that done in another lab. Today, it takes 8 oranges to make up what was in one orange back then. 8. Now think about that, because what we're talking about is the degradation of our food supplies and of our, no wonder people just, not always because just eating the wrong foods, because the food itself doesn't have the value it should have. We've got to go and start supporting the Amish, supporting the farmers, supporting everybody, and protect them. How dare we watch as they go and confiscate Amish cheese and milk and pour it into under the ground or whatever, just get rid of it all, and arrest them for things they've been doing for generations. Their kids are healthier by far than any of the others. And by the way, American kids are among the snotty, runny noses, allergies, peanut allergies, because peanut stuff was, as you know, used as adjunct in our shots, right? Like mercury, everything. I could go on and on, because once you take away responsibility, and you cannot sue big pharma, they don't have to be clean, they don't have to be accurate, and they don't have to care. When someone showed me what was really going on there, she was within 18 months of retirement. And they did not want her, even though she was the head of the whole system, they did not want her to be able to get her retirement. So they made her work double shifts. Old as she was, she got a heart problem from that. They made her walk because they moved her car that was parked. So it was like a quarter of a mile where they assigned her to park her car. I could go on and on with what they did. She became so angry, she showed me things that were going on there. How they used inadequately trained techs and everything else, because each tech has only a certain job to do, and they don't even know what the next person's doing. They just do their part. You can't 500, uh, 500 liters, into this big container and start brewing this or that or the other. Somebody else adds 600 milligrams or so, and somebody else turns up the heat. They don't know what they're doing. They only do their part of the job. And because of that, and they're on time limit, so they've got to get it produced fast enough too, because it's a matter of volume. All kinds of, just remember about I Love Lucy, where Lucy and her uh, landlady, they're trying to get a job together, and they're in this chocolate factory, and they're eating the chocolates as fast as they can before
Yeah.
they can. It's the same thing. They're working them so fast, and these people are so badly trained that they're dirty. They're not decanting things properly. They're not clean because they don't. The time limit when they're pouring all this stuff out. Maybe it's better now, but it was absolutely filthy, and they don't care. And again, another thing I did is took pictures and went to different post offices when they were shipping in COVID shots. And you've got these big containers, okay? See, I have to do my own research on some of this stuff. Why these big containers they're filled with insulations, because they have to keep, they're in dry ice. They have to keep these shots, and they have to lay them on the table for an hour or something when they're giving the shots. But on the other hand, next to that, these just say COVID. Next to it are these boxes, and they say COVID, COVID, COVID too. Wait a minute, those have to be saline. And about 30%. Yes, they were. They had to be. They were not being
I
insulated.
found the contract for it. I found it, and no one gave a crap when I found it. But I think it was
Send it to me.
300 million doses. I'll send it to you. I have it. Yeah.
Please send it to me, because
If you want, we can pull it up too. We can share it because I have your
right.
screen right here too, Des.
So approximately 1/3 of the shots were saline. At least from what I saw at the post office. I mean, so I'm just a lowly researcher now. If I had access to more, but it's obvious that the United States government was paying full price for these saline shots, and who knows who they were going to. Who got them instead of, if you didn't like somebody, guess what they got? Okay? How dare they fool with us? We must ban messenger RNA. And frankly, I would even go to, yes, we should. We need to set it aside. I know it's convenient. I know it makes lots of money. I know it's fun. I know you can get a lot done with it. We've got to find other avenues. We must. Or you don't know when you will get a saline or the real thing. or what's really in it, because they don't have to be responsible. If you get sick and die, you can't sue them. However, what is it? Can you imagine a doctor if he was malpracticing all the time and you couldn't sue him, and he could go ahead and just give you a shot and you end up shaking and then you die, and he could do it again and again and again, and that's just fine because he's making a lot of money for somebody else? It's sick. Can I go to you think I can go to a hospital in this country? Are you kidding? You think I'm going to?
I feel you.
Do not go. If you want to get decent treatment, by the way, it costs about $700. My son just recently did it for him to fly from Orlando, where he had his son lives. He's concerned about him, to Dallas. $700. It costs $736 to fly from Orlando to Oslo, Norway, or to if you wanted to go to Joel, like 600. I'm saying you can go overseas for the same amount of money, and over there you would not believe the quality of care. It's just fantastic. An MRI I need to have. They found out my brain was too big to operate on. That's another story. But at any rate, your brain will swell up if you have to get a certain operation. If there's no room for your brain to swell up, they can't give you the operation. I have vision problems and things like that because of concussions and so on that try to kill me. Small detail. But bottom line is that you're overseas, the MRI cost me $65. Over here, they wanted $4,000. And one place I went, they wanted only $800. $65 in Hungary. We are being so screwed over, people.
Yeah, Judith, that's actually why before I came to Mexico, I had been living in Holland for about 4 years because we left America so we could try to get some, interventions
There you
that
go.
America does not allow in the States. And I went to Holland, I went to Germany, I went to Malaysia, I went to Singapore, uh, UK, Africa.
Hungary is fantastic. I wish you'd gone there. Hungary has,
I
they
didn't.
invented,
I wish I would have known. It's not too
yeah.
late. I'm sure I'll get there. I'm sure I'll get there. I know I
But you know the quality if you know the right place. I mean, I had a nosebleed. I'm going to tell you something happened to me in Sweden. I chronic nosebleeds because I worked in these labs and we had to wash everything with acetone, and it just ruined our. This is why you'll see in a book about Lee called um, uh, it's Marina and Lee. Mine is Me and Lee. Marina and Lee is this book that was written. It was a real hit job on Lee. They said suddenly he's getting nosebleeds. Well, so was I, because when you're working with the acetone and you're washing your hands with it and you're breathing it, because you're working with the deadly viruses. Okay, you're not just using soap and water. You're not just using ordinary alcohol. You're using acetone. Okay, to clear out even out of your nasal passages and everything. You don't want any of that stuff in you, even though we had masks and everything, but still, okay, we had ventilation. Doesn't, and by the way, we're venting that thing right out into the open air. Oh my God. But at any rate, and flushing dead rodents down the toilet into the water system. And yeah,
yeah, to spread the
before we realized how bad it was, how deadly it was getting. But at any rate, so the reason I'm talking about this is there's a lot of contamination even now, of course, and all that going on. But back then, I'll never forget that we had no concept until it was too late. But anyway, our noses bled. And the other thing is that they said that Lee had nightmares. And this really upset me that she let him like shake and had these nightmares for like 15 minutes and wouldn't wake him up. Just mentioned they had them. If you love somebody, you never let them suffer like that. So I have she's got a few things against me too. So, I mean, we try to respect each other, you know what I'm saying? And But Lee had, at one point, he and I broke up. We had to slaughter up to 500 mice at a time. We went through over about 150,000 mice, people. We went through all the monkeys they had at Tulane. In August 29th, 1963, you'll see that a shipment came. It was on a Sunday. I remember all these details, all right? 8,000 pounds of monkeys were brought in. You know why? We'd use them all up. And here we have all these students and doctors and everybody coming to do research, and they're all no monkeys. So we had to bring in all the African greens were dead, and almost all the rhesus. And again, when we were finished at the end of August, when everything was verified, shipped sick monkeys over to Africa and to Haiti, so that it would look like it all came from there. And they could do that because actually some of that original HIV stuff and polio stuff had come, again, from Africa. And that's where the monkey kidney thing came, and they gave us all SB40 and all those other simian viruses. Now, I wanted to say something on the bright side. But if we work together, we love each other and help each other, we have all of the different talents. We need to put aside water. We need to put aside food. We need to put aside salt and whiskey, because you could always use that for bartering, and so on. There's many things you can do, and you get together with the communities, because it's going to go one way or another after November. We're either going to have 8 more years of what we have now. 8, not 4, 8. And then it'll be a uniparty forever. It'll be just like in so many countries where they just have one primary election with their chosen people in a dictatorship. I wish I were young again like you guys, but I know one thing, that I had nightmares. Like I would see Lee up on the Ferris wheel going around, and they were shooting at him with machine guns, and he fell to the ground, and his skull burst, and red light came out of his eyes, and I would scream and wake up. And after I spoke out, I never had any more nightmares.
Yeah, it's something about coming to terms of what the creator has planned for you. And, you know, no matter how hard you try to fight going down that path, he's going to put you back on it no matter what. And this is what you were supposed to do. And, I feel the same way. I hurt every day with my son, but if this hadn't happened to my son, I would not have been awakened the way that I was, and it made me learn so much. It turned me into the researcher that I am. It made me travel the world, and it made me travel the world because I needed to see it. I needed to see what life really is, how things really work, and to build a community. Through my journey, I've met some amazing people, Destiny being one, and yourself. And through that, my faith in the Creator has grown exponentially, because I wasn't a very religious person prior to all of these things happening.
As an atheist, I thought, foolish legends and so on. But it does look like we're in a simulation, so to speak, that God would actually enter such a situation just to have company, or I should say, just to love. He's God of love. And the one thing I've noticed is that I've been betrayed and things like that. These things will happen. If Jesus had Judas, and that was 1 out of 12. So think 1 out of 12 are going to really do bad stuff to you, Just think of it like that. And that's the way I look at it. I'm sorry, I've got this dust.
No, it's okay. And my husband, he's texting me, and he wants me to tell you that he's in love with you. and
Well, one
he
time,
wants
I love the guys,
everyone
I always will.
and he wants everyone to pay attention and see that it's the women that are making the moves and the men are just watching. And I gotta kind of agree with
Men's
that.
testosterone levels, they have been working on them to lower them for a long, long time. We got to stop doing the fluoride and everything. But
And
let me tell you something about
plastics.
fluoride you guys don't know, and then maybe we've got to maybe close down. But you've got to understand when I how did this thing about fluoride get started? Yes, I mean there's financial incentives. Well, they what they did is they did this study. You can look this up. It's kind of buried though. All right, they did a study where they took families where they had high fluoride in the water all along, and they said, "Look, I mean, you've got an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old here, or a 12-year-old. They've got a certain number of cavities. They have fewer cavities than anywhere else, but wherever the fluoride in the water is high, they have fewer cavities." And they published that, and they can, and boy, they picked that up. All the fluoride people did, and which is most, and circulated that everywhere and sold their fluoride. But guess what? What they didn't notice, people listen, the dentition, the eruption of the teeth of these kids with had all that fluoride in their system was 1 year later than it was. That meant that's why you end up with about like 25, or at least a significant less fewer number of cavities because their teeth were actually a year younger than other people's teeth, than their peers, okay, that were in fluoridated areas. So we were sold this Bahui when actually it makes very little difference. And fluoride and mouthwash and most of these toothpastes destroy the oral bacteria in your mouth, make you have all kinds of cavities, still come up, soften up the calcium in the enamels. And as you know, we have they do lots of you get oral cancers and everything else going on because you don't have the right bacteria. I use, and what only you hear this, after I eat anything that's acidic, like a glass of orange juice, I'll take a teaspoon of powdered cheddar cheese. Not only do I completely balance the pH again, but I add calcium in my mouth so that anything that started getting dissolved is fixed. I wish I'd known that before they pulled so many of my teeth, all right? But at any rate, I had them pulled because they were broken in getting smashed in accidents, so-called accidents. And I think one of the things is God has put in my heart to even love your enemies. And, I feel sorry for them, the people that did these things, and they don't understand. They've got problems themselves, and you can't save the world. But, here's what you can do. God has given you a path, and you're responsible. There's a child that falls in that path, you got to help them. If there's a flat tire in that path, you got to help them. If there's somebody says, give me a dollar, you got to do it. You know what? And when you do that, you're saving your own soul. We're responsible for the path we're on. We don't have to save the world, but if we just do what's right and do what's good and do it with love, the result is remarkable. I've had miracles, no doubt about it. It's been wonderful. I don't regret anything. I've told my truth. I've told it to you. And I say my truth because, of course, there are people that say, well, that's your truth. No, it is the truth. And nobody has been able to stop the truth. No matter what happens to me, all I can say is God keeps giving me wisdom. So I may have been Lee's girlfriend, but I want to be everybody's grandma. Give you wisdom.
I
God
love
bless you.
that. I love that, and I believe you, and it's so genuine. I can feel it, and I just want to tell you, I'm so grateful to know you, be able to have access to, because as far as I'm concerned, you are a historical character. I mean, you are a walking library. And I really, really am going to ask again. And this is not something that Judith asked me to do, but please go to Amazon and purchase Judyth's book. It really helps her. You see, she has to move a lot, and she cannot go to the doctors and just do like how normal people do. Like, I know the life that Judyth is living. That's why I'm in Mexico. You can't go and do the regular traditional things. You have to do things differently. You have to move differently because you are a targeted individual. In fact, all three of us are targeted individuals on this panel. And the support from you guys is what protects us. It protects Judith. And Judith, I have my husband. He said he had to come speak to you himself. So I'm going to scoot over
Yes.
so he can come say hi to you.
Listen,
How do you do?
hi, Judyth. Hey, Dad. Hey, listen, I don't have anything to say. I just wanted to be on camera with you. That's it. You understand? So I don't have anything to say to you except God bless you, bravo. God, I can't wait to talk. I can't wait to see you face to face. But I just wanted to be on camera with you because you are fantastic.
It's the Lord. It's the Lord to save me and open my eyes. And I'm nothing. I'm an instrument in the hands of God. This way I look at it. And all I wanted to do is cure cancer. I want to drop this word, bacteriophage. I know it doesn't mean much to a lot of people. You might know. Bacteriophage is the key to curing cancer, but it's so cheap and easy they won't do it. But thank you for your kind words. My goodness.
Listen,
Wow.
you have no much strength. You have no idea how much strength you've given me. We had to move we moved 30 times in the past 4 years, and this is
Okay.
one generation. So you've
Yeah, in
given me so much strength.
22 years, I have gone through 3 passport books. And one time they tried to arrest me in the Netherlands because you've been there more than 90 days. They sent the police to arrest me, but I'm also an artist.
Right.
And I had a 6-month pass there because oil paste can't dry in 3 months. It takes longer.
Right, but we
So
have DAFT, the Dutch
had to go.
American Friendship Treaty. We have DAFT. The Dutch American Friendship Treaty allows us to go to Holland and Amsterdam like we want. So that was completely ridiculous. And I know it was ridiculous because we utilized that. So I don't know how you're doing it by yourself. You just give me so much strength. You three ladies, you are a brilliant AI. Des the smartest AI human being you could ever find. She's, as you can realize, but y'all give me so much strength. So I just wanted to be on camera with you because to me, you are the Library of Alexandria right here for us to see, touch, and hug. And I can't wait to hug you. And if I squeeze your butt, don't tell my wife. That's between me and you. Can you dig it? You understand? That's between me and you. She ain't gotta know everything.
Well,
It's okay. Only 2,000 people heard that.
please.
Oh,
You make
I'm sorry. Well, let me get the hell out of here. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this, Des. Thank you for being on here, you human AI. And let me get out of here. Thank you so much.
take care. Wow.
Yes, he is
Hold on to him. He's a good guy.
he is a character. But before we go, I did want Des to have an opportunity to show you
Yeah.
the things that she was talking about. So let me pull her screen up here.
Okay. And the other is if anybody has any questions, people listening. Okay.
Yeah.
For here. Yeah.
So this is the story. Let me scroll down. So
Yep. I see
this
it.
was from this year, February 16th. This year, Department of Defense transitions the legacy special immunization program to commercial partners. And I couldn't, nobody cared about the story. I tried to tell, nobody cared. I cared. I was like, this is monumental. Like, they've only done this one other time. And it's a big deal. But it says Fort Detrick's special immunization program began over 60 years ago.
Dietrich is the key. Okay. Anyway.
And it says that, their baloney reason for having the program running was to help military and civilian laboratory workers Mhm. But it says now it includes the new IND vaccines, which produced by the Salk Institute, right? And the U.S. Army. And now it says here that the JPEO, the Joint Program Executive Office, CBR&D, partnered with the USAMIDA, and they together are leading this effort.
Yeah,
to
send that
give
to
it-
me, please. Yeah.
I will definitely send it to you. And now I think the last thing I saw on this was right there. Oh yeah, Bruce Goodwin's involved, which he's no good. He's no good. He's a bad guy. He's behind this whole program, but they transitioned it now to the Salk Institute. Why would you, and nobody's
no,
asking questions. Yeah.
no, Salk has been invested in a lot of this behind the scenes for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But people don't know that though.
Right? Yeah, you
they
know
don't.
that.
Yeah, and they don't know that, and they put it out in that article, and there was they only covered it in that article for the Army, and one more for USAMIDA had one, and that was it. They didn't. It was quiet as could be, just like the policy changes they did to the definition for gene therapy in 2018, right before the virus came around. They changed that. Scott Gottlieb did
Name
that.
gene therapy. I mean, instead of gene manipulation, which is what's really going on. Some of it's been good, but yeah, like the atomic bomb. I mean, you can take what's in the inside of an atomic bomb and use it for good, but it has been done a lot. But the misuse, nobody's responsible. Tell me who we've got. Dr. Fauci is what? How can he be so immune? This man has been doing bad things ever since I can remember. I mean, I remember when he was working on this poor family in Sarasota, and they had HIV, and poor little boy was not allowed to go to school, and he got AIDS. Okay, and he says, lock him down. So he started that, and he's remdesivir. Do you realize that they had to trot that remdesivir out of deep freeze that they had for years, get rid of it somehow? And
They approved it through the animal rule, which had never been done for that class of drug ever before with the Army, and it was paid for by Gilead. And
well,
he
Gilead,
made the drug. It's a conflict of interest,
well,
like you
Gilead.
believe.
There you go with Fauci. I mean, bingo. So
I'll get you these documents, though, Judyth. I'd love for you to look them over, especially that contract for, I think it was over 100 million doses of pure saline, but it said for COVID-19 vaccines, but underneath it says description of product, and it said 100 million doses of saline, right? And all the other ones, they'll say mRNA vaccine, whatever.
right.
It was specifically saline.
We paid full price as if it were a fancy drug when it's an adulterated. I'm going to lose my cool. I've got to be careful.
I will too. I get the same way about this because it's just when I spend so much time looking at this, I see it, and it's very hard for me to like vocalize it to other people to understand what I'm trying to say. I was like, but this shouldn't happen. Like if this vaccine really did work, they wouldn't need to buy 100 million doses of saline. Saline's in every hospital in the world. They don't need it. Why are they injecting unless they're meaning to cover up something? And nobody can understand.
Actually, this is how they indemnify. I mean, they're saying, look, we all took it, and you've got like Kissinger. What did he take? You think he took? If he didn't get saline, I'm Santa Claus.
Joe Biden got saline for sure. For sure.
Well, they're getting the shot, and you see they didn't take the cap off.
They have those retractable needle ones now that are like, you can get them at joke stores. It looks like a needle, but it goes inside the syringe when you press it down. So it's a hocus pocus one. Yeah. It's so crazy.
Well, again, by the way, just to help people feel a little better, get yourself UV light at nano 550 or so, and no, don't have any ozone. Ozone's not good for you. But that you can put that for 15 minutes at one quarter of a room and another, and it'll get rid of black mold, which is such a horrible and disastrous with all these hurricanes and everything, people, if you've been in a hurricane, get yourself these UV lights, and they will kill the black mold, and it'll save your lungs. It's very important, and it'll also even preserve some of your food so that it won't spoil as fast. And you can, if you have a mask and you're forced to wear it, you can put your mask, by the way, in a microwave if you wet it down. By the way, did you know you can't kill ants in a microwave? The microwaves are actually
I've
so
heard that
big.
before, but why can't
That's
they?
true. Because the ants are so small that the microwaves miss them.
That's
Yeah.
crazy. That's so
Yeah.
cool. Wow,
Yeah.
I didn't know that,
So
but I'm glad you brought that up. That's interesting. Wow, I learned something every
there are a
day.
lot of little, there are things in my head. I have too many actually, and it's
I know what it's all about.
it's
Ariel and I have gotten these conversations where she's in, like her man says, he thinks I'm an AI. He's convinced I'm a computer or something, and I'm not. I'm not. but it's just
well,
like when things
well, you
get
and
stuck
I
in your head, it's just
we,
like,
we share this. We share this,
mhm.
and there's nothing we can do. I mean, once it's in your head, it's the. Oh, I mean, I've got way too much in my head, and the worst, I guess, growing up is that one would say, "Well, you heard our conversation. What did she say? What did I say?" And of course, one of them is going to get mad at me, you know, because I'll tell them word for word what really happened. And the other bad thing is I always knew what I was going to get for Christmas and things like that. You know, all those things happen. Yeah, it's just when you even know the price of what they paid. So my aunt, when I was in the hospital, for example, she said, "I want to get you something nobody would get you." I said, "Well, if it's very, very hard, would you still do it?" So I said, I know what I want, but they don't exist, at least in this area. He said, "Judy, I would do anything for you." She's my Hungarian aunt. "I do anything for you, my darling, you know." I said, "Okay, I want a doll that says Mama, that's dressed in blue outfit and has red hair." Poor woman had to go all the way to Chicago to find one. When I was in the hospital little, it probably God has worked in strange ways because I was in there so long that I was given intravenous feeding for about 7.5 months. And I almost starved to death. And um, we're supposed to fast and pray. I do pray, but I don't do fast very well. It's like, I'm going to starve, I'm going to starve, I'm going to starve. And but one of the side effects is that David Ferry, who was great in hypnosis, Lee Oswald could not be hypnotized. And anybody saying that he was MK'd, absolutely not. They actually talked about how they were taught how to resist. Okay, Lee was absolutely taught how to resist MK because they saw all these people coming back from like uh, from Korea that had been brainwashed. And so Lee was, and that's why he also trusted Quakers. He was trained by a Quaker to recognize body language at that time was brand new, that kind of thing. In fact, dyslexia, the whole idea came out in 1963 for the first time. And I was reading about it, I told Lee, and you should have seen his face change. When I told him, it looks like actually boys who have dyslexia are actually smarter than average, what, it just made me so happy that because he was so intelligent. And the lovely thing about him when I could go on and on about him, and I don't mean to do it, but please read my book. I'll put it that way because it's all there. You'll see what a great man he was. And I'm not going to let his memory die. Now, guess what? For 10 years, I've been in charge of the JFK Remembrance Ceremony and Moment of Silence in Dallas, Texas. Please come and honor Kennedy. We honor Kennedy, and we say Lee Oswald is innocent right in Dallas. Dallas, Texas does not have even an alley named, not even an alley named for John F. Kennedy. Nothing. No statue, nothing. They've got a statue of Mr.
Isn't he the
Dealey,
most named president though for buildings and schools in the world? Like in
but
in,
not
in streets, but
Dallas.
not there.
No,
That's
no.
crazy.
Well, that doesn't mean, but let me tell you that the city of Dallas is a lot of them. I gave a talk last year, and it was very important. I made a deposition. Now, I'd been working with researchers all these years, and they would do things like, I believe that part, but my theory says blah, blah, and this, I don't believe that part, and so on and so forth. Researchers, my book won't sell if you're telling the truth. All right, all this stuff. So I turned to lawyers, trial lawyers. So, for example, the afterword was written by a trial lawyer in my book, Lee Harvey, Oswald, and Me. Mark Mueller, 30 years, is one of the top 100 trial lawyers out of tens of thousands of them, year upon year, okay, in the United States. The book, the foreword of it was written by another lawyer, HSCA's Bob Tannenbaum, who was a living witness to all the hanky-panky that went on with the House Select Committee, trying to say again that Lee Oswald did it, but he had help. But of course, they never looked into that. There was actually a conspiracy, blah, blah, blah. The reason I'm mentioning all this is that by going to lawyers, then Steve Kennedy and others got together in front of over 350 Dallas citizens eating a fancy dinner. I gave a deposition that was recorded about the innocence of Lee Oswald and what he did under oath. And it's in the portal of Texas history. It's been admitted as part of Texas history. And we're going to do it again in November at the conference in Dallas. I'm going to give a deposition again.
And what's that
Just
date again?
What?
What's the date again? November what?
November 22nd, right?
Well, remember, Friday, November 20th. This whole year has been exactly like it was back in '63 when Kennedy
Yes,
was
it
killed.
is. It started on a
Every single
Monday.
day. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So on Friday,
Remember, girl, Monday.
22nd. Yeah. So the conference, this Dallas conference, and if you just write to me, I can make sure you get a ticket or send you the information. But it's, I'll put it this way. I started it, and I just handed it over a couple of years ago because I'm on the run. Once I couldn't live overseas and had to live here, I couldn't raise money without being located. You see what I'm saying? Understand, the first time I came back, after they said I claimed to create AIDS and all the other horrible things they did to me, so I had all these death threats. The first time I came back was when me and Lee came out as a paperback in 2011. Not in America. I came with a bodyguard. It cost $5,000 for him, okay? And went to Canada, to Vancouver. Now get this. Was I safe? I ended up in the hospital because somebody put glass in my food. So that was my first trip back to the United States. And I've had lots of things happen. All right. And that's got in the papers and everything. But I'm just saying it hasn't been easy, but God is with me. And not that I'm worthy or anything like that. I just pray I've helped enough people. Because remember, I was involved in helping to develop something to kill people. And they told me it was to save our country. That's why I saved so many documents. It wasn't because it was to help Lee. Nobody knew that Lee was going to be accused like he was or anything like that. Not then. Saved all that because we thought we were going to be heroes and kill Castro, and someday we'd be able to tell it and prove it. And meanwhile, we wouldn't have World War III. It'd be like trying to kill Putin today, okay? Same kind of thing. And our hearts were in it. We thought we were doing the right thing. We thought we were helping our country. They used us, and most of them were murdered, and one of the few left that weren't. And anyway, God's, as I say, has blessed me, and you have blessed me as well. And I thank all of you for hearing me and listening. And if anybody has any questions, here I am.
Well, I do. Sorry, I don't know why. But I do want to say that Lindsay from the Back Injured Lounge, she said that she loves you and she's going to give you a call this week. So she did want you to make sure that you knew that she was shouting you out. And we did have a few questions, but I think Des may have been reading the questions as we were going through.
I was. There was
yeah.
a couple things that actually I still have it right here.
Okay.
primarily somebody wanted to know what your stance was on the creation of HIV and whether or not it had any relation to do with the hepatitis B vaccine and other experiments that were going on in the late 70s.
Well, that's all over the place. I mean, I don't have to answer that.
That's what I kind of thought too. I wasn't gonna say anything, but I was like, well, they did ask but yeah, I'm pretty sure that's pretty clear now.
Yeah.
That's true. You've got a lot of love in here. Nancy says she loves you. I know that, like, Nurse Lindsay said she loves you.
Oh, thank you, Lindsay.
Susie Q from North Carolina wants to know. She said, does she know when XMR, I think she's talking the xenomorphic murine virus, when that got put into vaccines, and is there a cure for that type of virus? XMRV.
There's a cure for every virus. We just have to find it. Some of them aren't that hard, really. We've got, I'm going to give you a good example. For example, they're telling us that we have a real problem with infected chickens, okay, with avian flu. So we're going to kill. This is important, people. Listen, because we need to save these animals. They kill the entire flock to get rid of it, right? Eradicate it. No, that's not what you should do. You separate the flock, quarantine it, see which ones survive or which ones last the longest. Then you work. That's the way you do it. You don't wipe them all out. You'll never get rid of it. And of course, they do that so that they're destroying our food supply.
It destroys the cure, essentially, because
you don't even know if the PCR is actually being brought by them. We don't even know if they're inoculating. How come they go to a flock that looks perfectly healthy and all of a sudden they find they're going to kill them all?
They're trying to starve us to death. They want to kill our food. Poisoning, and it's taking too long for them, I think, and they want to just outright starve people.
I'm just saying, I'm hoping everybody votes for the right side, or you're going to get 8 more years of what we've got now. And I know that's political, but that's right. That's the black MAGA hat. I wish I had one, but I don't want to force anybody to, because so many people, you see, it's human nature. Once you hear a certain thing that this person is bad, your first impression is so strong, it's hard to get over. And on top of that, we know now psychologically, if you argue with somebody who's already made up their mind, they will get more made up than before, because you know what, that assails their sense of that they came to a conclusion and that they were wrong. And that is threatening the individual, their identity and everything. So don't think you can change them. All you can say is, don't think about the people you're voting for. Look at what has happened. Do you want more of that? Think of it like that. Do you want more of what's been going on? Or do you want try something else? And because you can't talk about the people, it's already in everybody's head what they're going to do,
And there was one more, 2 more comments. Paul said that what you've said has been a confirmation of what Dr. Cruz recently said on a podcast.
Well, let me say what I want to
I said that you had said it long before then, but
well, Dr. Cruz, actually, he asked me to talk to his group, and really he didn't have time to listen to me. It turned out I had to speak at a poolside party, had no way to show my nice PowerPoints, and all that kind of thing. Couldn't do any of that. He was very, very busy, but I left my books there, and he looked at it later, but we never actually had a conversation or anything. And he's done well, but there are a number of errors. And excuse me, I'm one of these perfectionists. I'm a scientist. I can't help it. There are a few errors. And I don't want anybody to be confused. Dr. Mary Stewart is supposed to be Dr. Mary Sherman.
Yeah. I thought there were, I noticed a couple like inconsistencies in what he said, just very few things. There was just slight accident things. I don't think there were anything major, but
they can slightly mislead you about certain things. And don't get me wrong, he's been able to do what I can't do. I can't reach the people like he has.
I think he's doing great things. It's bringing a lot, because he talked about you in your book, in that big podcast, and it's gone viral.
Yeah. It's interesting because he didn't have time to talk to me at the time. and it's kind of interesting. But he's very busy. I mean, he's adored by people following him. He's right about red light, although too much is too much. In nature, you've got to go and do what nature does. You're not supposed to live in it. So I feel the other is that, well, I'll just put it this way. I'm grateful that he's bringing out things that otherwise wouldn't be, even though they're little errors. That's me and my picky science
I think
side.
I was the same way watching it too. I was just kind of like, yeah, but I
Yeah.
know I'm just being picky about it. But I'm the same way with whenever I write my own stuff. So that's why it takes me forever to get like my threads done, because I'm like, I want it perfect, and then it always mistakes anyways. Always has mistakes.
With my bad eyes, I'm always making terrible typos on text and have to keep apologizing. The other is I'm being shadow banned right now on X. They let me loose for 3 days and I got 200 followers instantly, but then it shut down again. So like for almost 2 years, I had 4,216 people, and that's it. No matter how many joined, it would go up maybe to 4,220, and then it'd go back to 16 or to 12, but it always ended up at 4,216 for 2 years. Now that is just doing that.
we have 2.2 thousand people watching right now on X. So, and that's just one platform. That doesn't include all the other platforms that are
Well,
streaming.
come join me, and if they do, they can go back and look at like 10,000. I just posted, for example, about cats. How dare you feed your cat only one cat food all? It's like, imagine. So I said, my cat eats 4 different kinds mixed together. It's hard to be a picky cat when the cat picks out what it likes best, but then it eats the next, and this works. So my cat gets not only fish, but also gets venison, also gets duck, and also gets chicken and salmon, because I give her at least 4 different mixed together at once. And so she's getting a wide variety, just like she'd get in nature that way.
That's
So
how it's supposed to be.
I post about all kinds of things to help people with their lives.
Broca wants to say to you, thank you, Judyth, for all you've done in the help in the medical community and patients suffering from COVID and other vax injuries. God bless you, and keeping you with big heart. And Aaron thinks you're smart, brighter at 80 than most people today.
Oh, I see. I've actually gained 4 people for the first time this week. 59 people joined.
I will guilt trip everybody. Go add Judyth. If I check on your page and you're one of my followers and I see you're not following Judyth as a mutual follower, I will drop you as a follower. Go follow Judyth.
I have 15,000 posts, and a lot of that is medical information. A lot of that has to be practical things or unusual little items, like I just talked about using cheese powder to keep the bacteria in your mouth properly informed, and alive.
That makes sense to me, though, because you've got the calcium for teeth, but you've also got the bacteria in it, the healthy bacteria, which is good for the mouth flora, that makes sense to me. I'd never thought of it, though. That makes a lot of sense.
Get one more thing to tell people. You have the fluoride and the chlorine in the water. And if anybody's taking a bath there, you could also do this in a shower head, but it's harder. But if you want to take a nice soaking bath, you know what you're risking. You're pulling a couple cups of chlorinated water. Why don't you use the stuff you put in fish aquariums so they don't get hurt by chlorine? It takes it out. Why don't you use that in your bathtub? See, there are so many things we can do to avoid some of the toxins around us. How many people are using? You only need a teaspoon in the water to get rid of all that chlorine. Why don't they use it?
It's a good idea. I bet they don't use it in anything
Anyway,
other than for fish.
So I've got a lot of practical things I put in there along there too. It's not all just medicine, but stuff like that.
So guys, if you haven't already, why don't you go right on to X and follow Judyth like right now? This isn't going to be hard to do. It's just, clicking one button
Like,
She
when else
is.
do you get to talk to or follow? Like, I was just like, I don't even know why this has to be convinced to people, but I'm going
Yeah.
to, because apparently some people need it. Like, I was literally just holding, this is my John F. Kennedy pillow. I spent my 30th birthday at his grave, right? Because I found a penny from 1964 when I was 9 years old that had JFK inscribed into this penny. And I asked my mom, why is JFK on the penny? And she goes, he's not. He's Lincoln's on the penny. I was like, no, Mom, they're both on the penny. And that began the whole love story I had for JFK, because she told me when he died, because she was in high school when that happened. And at the time, she just had so much love for him and the whole thing. And she never trusted the government after that day. Like, she was like young, and she never trusted them ever again. Yeah, that's why I'm not vaccinated too. Like, she never trusted them ever again after that. And so I didn't
Have
get
you ever had a
vaccine.
flu shot? Did you ever get a
Never.
flu
I've
shot?
no shot. I've never had a vaccination for anything. Never. I swear, nothing. I had religious exemptions in high school and in college just to go to school without having them. But I've never had one. My eldest brother had his, but I don't.
Well, in our family, the ones who got vaccinated, they're not in good shape. They're ill. They're sick. The ones that listen to me, they're doing fine. So that's just in our family.
And
Well,
people need to realize we're talking to somebody who knows these things, that it's a real treat, it's a real treasure, and it's a real honor to talk to you, Judyth. And you have such love in your heart, and I think that you are doing the world such a favor just by being honest and true and open to talking to people like me and Ariel. We're starstruck and jazzed, and I'm trying to keep up. And I told her that, you can ask her. I told her, I was like, I think she's just too smart for people to follow along sometimes. I was like, because I rarely get my brain exhausted with people, but like, I was like, the first time I heard you talk, I was like, oh, whew, I should have took notes. And so I've been taking notes.
Oh, I've got tons. I mean, if whatever you want to talk about. I've written this book about the future of AI called Letters to the Cyborgs. We're going to put a new one out because they actually took out 6 stories that they thought were too outrageous. They're not. Well, that's right. They're going to republish the book now because the first story that's in it, a lot of it, I wrote it 2015, and a lot of the first stories already come true. So, I mean, oh yeah, this one of my, I love science fiction and all that. And so anyway, so these are science fiction, but it shows every story in there is based on an invention we already have. I'm going to give you an example. You're walking down the street. If you don't pay a certain amount of money, you will continually have commercials and ads broadcast into your brain. It's coming. And it'll happen during your sleep, and you have to pay a fee that way also, because they say, well, you won't remember, so it's okay. It's lawful. But of course, it will influence you. It's coming.
I believe that. That's scary. That's a horrifying future.
Well, there's more, because I noticed where they've canceled in some states honors programs because they want everybody to have equity.
Yeah, my home state, Oregon, they no longer have test scores for the high school students. They all are just given passing grades, and that's infuriating.
Well,
Because it tells them they're not worth even trying.
Well, it's I'll tell you why it's inhuman, because we're all individuals. We're taking away our individuality, saying you aren't any better. No, I'm not better than anybody else, but I'm going to tell you, I'm better at some things than somebody else. And if you're going to have somebody running an ice cream machine and somebody throws gasoline in it, but you know what that you're supposed to put cream in it, we're not equal, and that's fact. Now I said, remember this poor person who for 9 years, I twice a month at least, worked on this puzzle. And he was so overjoyed. It made him so happy because I helped him, picked up the pieces for him and encouraged him. So thrilled. It was the same puzzle for 9 years. Now that man shouldn't be running and shouldn't be hired, okay, for SpaceX. What they did to Musk is so unconscionable. The Department of Justice sued him for not hiring people to work at SpaceX who were literally could be spies for China and everything else, and sued him, even though SpaceX had a contract with NASA saying you are not allowed to hire anybody who's an alien. So they one gonna if he hires aliens, he loses contract. If he doesn't hire aliens, he had to pay a huge fine. Now, is that fair? Whether you do this to
No, it's
people
bull
who don't
crap.
like. All right, so we have national treasures that are that we're blessed because China's immensely bigger than we, and they probably have 3 or 4 of him. But because of communism, they are not able to really show what they can do. We've had opportunities in this country, and don't get me wrong, this man, they're saying, I saw something saying on X saying billionaires don't care about people or they wouldn't have so much money. That's a man who, all right, must work for 20 years between 12 and 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, and he doesn't deserve what he got because he's a billionaire. And it'd be different if he didn't create stuff, but he did. And by the way, some of the stuff that the things I wish I could have created, I wasn't given the opportunities. But on the other hand, it looked like I was going to do so much, and then they cut me off. And they think I had to be quiet for 35 years, or I would have been dead too. So thank you. God bless you for hearing me
We are
out.
so lucky you're still here. So I'm
Thank you.
I'm
The
elated.
pleasure is ours. The pleasure is truly ours. And Judyth, let's do this again. Let's find another time when we can touch on things that we didn't have an opportunity to touch on. Because, I know that you have so much information. So, but I think the most important thing that you got out today was your cancer research and the fact that you can prove that Lee did not assassinate Kennedy.
If he saved Kennedy's life, and I'll finish with that. Said, I believe I saved Kennedy's life 3 weeks ago. Didn't brag or anything like that. But what really gets to me is that in 2013, on November 22nd, 2013, a very important day, I met with Abraham Bolden, Secret Service agent who was with the Kennedy detail, who happened to be in Chicago, when the phone rang and the FBI called and said, stand down. He said, what are you talking about? Now, this is back when Kennedy was alive. And they said, we've arrested our men, and we don't know where they've rounded up everybody, so Kennedy is not coming to Chicago. And the name of the person who gave them the basic information, and the others did too, but that was the first, his name was Lee. And that was Lee Oswald. And Abraham Bolden knew it, and James Douglas knew it, but when I spoke out in 1999, they hadn't spoken out yet. So everybody said, come on, we can believe he's a pacifist. Come on, what do you mean save Kennedy's life? The reason Lee became a patsy, why they snuffed him out, using one of his own friends. And Jack Ruby had no choice. And of course, then they got rid of Jack Ruby, as I've explained. Okay. And God gave me a chance to talk and meet these people. I met them all. And there are people that have often said, oh, come on, you couldn't have met them all in that period of time. Are you kidding? New Orleans, with the kind of people I was associated with and what we were doing, Lee Oswald wasn't just any ordinary guy. He was pretending to be pro-Castro, passing out these flyers. Every time the flyers were passed out, they had a different address on them because it said lectures, it said meetings, okay? Never held a lecture, never held a meeting. It was not about that. It was to have them knock on the door, nobody answers, and no meeting, what's going on, and leaves, walks around the corner, has a coffee or something, then they arrest him. And I know what happened to one of them. They planted drugs on him, beat him up, and sent him back to Cuba. He was finding the spies. Castro was sending spies over here to kill anybody who was going to try to kill him. So Lee was protecting us, And they made a courier out of him because he was intelligent. He learned how to keep the thing alive. We had these special thermoses. By the way, any test tube is glass, right? Thermos is glass inside. You can grow cancer inside a thermos the same as you can do in any test tube. So, I mean, we had it all set up. And not only that, you could take a mouthful of that because we also had a different kind of reagent so that when it was yellow, it was clean and pure. When it got older, it would turn pink, opposite of the way it usually is. You look at it, and if you tasted it, it tells you this formula is very special. It tastes like chicken soup almost, chicken broth. You could actually take a swig of that and gargle with it and spit it out, and it wouldn't hurt you because these cancer cells are lining on the glass. Only as they start dying, if there's nothing to fall off, then it's not going to hurt you. So it's the cancer cells when they are collected and injected into your body. Like Ochsner said, we have a mouse, and if we inject a certain amount of these cells, this is why they brought me in. You inject a certain amount of cells in the mouse, its system is going to clear it out. And he said, that's the problem we have with Castro. He said, yeah, we can give him cancer all right, but we have to give him a quart of it. He's not going to let anybody put a quart of cancer cells in his body. That's how I found out that it was about Castro. I mean, I wasn't even positive, sure. So they never say anything. I mean, nobody's writing anything down. One person said, you said nothing's written down, but you said there are sign-off sheets. Well, of course we had sign-off sheets and logs and everything, but we had no connections with each other, except I saw initials. I could figure out a couple that way, who was involved. There were at least 5 labs involved. And then you have the linear particle accelerator. Jack Cruz, to his credit, actually saw the accelerator. And when he told me, and of course it was in a horizontal state, in other words, it was inactive and not being used, but as actually Ochsner's clinic. He was working with John Ochsner. John Ochsner knew nothing. It was Aki, Ochsner's oldest son, who was Alton Ochsner's junior, who knew what was going on because his brother John was so busy. They were all heart surgeons, the 3 brothers. By the way, I was so dispensable, people. Ochsner had 4 kids. 3 of them became heart surgeons. They were all boys. His daughter became an interior decorator. So I was a lot more dispensable, you see, in his mind. So with this, I'm just saying Lee Oswald did try to save Kennedy's life. He protected us. That's why we were able to accomplish so much, because Mafia couldn't reach it. I mean, Mafia didn't care about us. They wanted us to succeed. But Castro's spies could not. And because he pretended to be pro-Castro, it was so easy to call him a communist and to set him up as killing Kennedy, the very last thing in the world.
Him being part of Kennedy's death might have just been the best thing for everyone else. Even though he didn't actually shoot him, he wasn't responsible for the assassination. The fact that he disrupted the assassination attempt that was going to happen in Chicago, and how botched all the plans were then for the November incident led to so many questions.
Made him a marked man. I mean, he knew after that, he said, I'm not going to make it. They're going to kill me. He said, I've seen too many faces. By the way, we have Mr. James Files out there, and although he is doing this, I think, in order to settle things in his own mind, having killed others and so on, there are serious difficulties, the main one being, where are his witnesses? Okay. We have others who say, yeah, we brought in Mannlicher Carcanos for Oswald to use and all this kind of thing, and we were blah, 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 blah. Wait a minute. What do you mean? You had to bring him in. I've told this story all this month now, and it's true. We actually had to, Lee took me into a gun shop because they had sport clothes also on sale, and he got me some shorts. And we walked past a barrel full of Mannlicher Carcanos for $12 to $15 each. So he's going to go and order. I mean, they were everywhere. You could tell when people are pretending they're good researchers that they misspelled Bannister with 2 N's instead of 1. Yeah, and other things like that. They're giveaways. So I could tell so fast if somebody was really there and knew what they were talking about. I see things in pictures. I can remember how many windows in a building. Oh, some of that is just too much, and I get lost going around the corner. That's what completely inept when it comes to where am I? 'Cause all I'm looking at is counting windows, and I don't know. It's the way my brain works. I see everything in pictures. I don't forget. I can remember what I ate. 60 Minutes kind of fascinated with that, and they later did a story on people like me. By the way, 60 Minutes wanted very much to publish this. They tried 3 times to film me, and you know what happened? Tried 3 times to film me, and they couldn't get it done. They had promised me they would. It was their big story. We were talking about Mike Wallace and Phil Scheffler, and of course, Don, who was in charge of the Hewitt, who was in charge of founding 60 Minutes. That was their big story. Upstairs, they wouldn't let him do it. And you'll see in my book, I have a check and a W-2 form from CBS. They forced them to pay me money for time I missed, money I lost that I couldn't tutor people. And they said, this will be proof forever for you that you were telling the truth, but they wouldn't let us hear it. Because you don't go and give money to somebody who's not credible. And I've got the proof that they did that for me. Because they were very sorry that they wouldn't let that story get out.
They were probably under control at that point, as much as the
Dan Rather
lack
is
of
still alive
journalism
here.
too,
Dan Rather is the #1 person that stopped it.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I was never a Dan Rather fan anyways. I really wasn't. I don't watch TV anyway.
God bless you all. I'm going to say goodbye before everybody's exhausted. Bye bye.
Thank you, Judyth.
Thank you so much.
God bless you.
Again, guys, please follow Judyth on X, and also please buy her books. I mean, these are history. This is American history. It pertains to you. So it would behoove you to purchase the books. Okay, guys? Thank you again, Judyth. We love you.
Thank you, guys.
We'll be in contact, and maybe if Judyth has time for us again, share more of her story. Until then, all of you all stay blessed, be healthy.
This will be in my highlights tab, this video, so you guys can go find it. I'll link it in there.
God bless you.
All right.
You guys. Good night.
Dallas, November 22nd at the Grassy Knoll. Don't forget it.
Never.
Good night, guys.
Night. God bless you all. Take care.
Bye.